Recording in progress.
Whoa.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Chuck Tironi, Reading Conservation Administrator, consistent with the governor's orders who's suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and allowing us to adhere to social distancing requirements during COVID-19 crisis. This Town of Reading Conservation Commission meeting is being held virtually via Zoom for audio and video participation of the conservation commissioners, applicants, their representatives, and the public. During this meeting, myself or the conservation chair will unmute commissioners, applicants, representatives, and members of the public individually as needed. During the commission meeting, the chair and the administrator will be the only ones to permit video sharing. These controls are in place to ensure that tonight's meeting is safe and effective. At this time, Chair Martha Moore will conduct a roll call vote to confirm that all members can hear and are present.
We had talked about whether Brian would run tonight's meeting. Are you comfortable with running it, Brian, or do you want to have me take over?
Why don't you do it?
Okay. All right. So in this order, we will vote tonight. Brian,
Brian Bowe, Vice Chair, present.
Carl,
Carl Ciccone, member.
John,
John Sullivan, member, present.
Andrew,
Andrew Driven, member, present.
and Martha Moore, chair, present.
Thank you, everyone. Please note that tonight this meeting is being recorded. Also be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All the material for this meeting is available at the Conservation Division site, and I recommend that commission members and the public follow the agenda as posted on the Town of Reading webpage unless otherwise noted. However, because this meeting is being conducted remotely, I advise applicants in particular that the commission cannot discuss or consider documents which are not previously posted. Information may, however, be presented orally. Similarly, members of the public are encouraged to provide written public comments, but should understand that not all participants nor the commission members will be able to see any written comments during the course of this meeting. Before we get started on tonight's agenda, I'm going to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure that accurate minutes are taken. For any response, please wait for the chair to yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. After the commissioners make their remarks, and these remarks have been addressed by the applicant, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify themselves by name. Once the chair has a list of public commentators, the chair will call on each one by name and will afford them 4 minutes for comments. The applicants may be requested to respond by the chair or the conservation administrator. After the public comment, the chair will once again go down the line of commissioners, inviting each one by name to provide any further comment, question, or motion. Please hold off until your name is called. Finally, as a reminder, each vote taken during the meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. That's all I have. Chair Moore.
Okay, our first hearing is 0 Small Lane, but that has already been continued until February 8th. It is Assessors Map 40 and 41, Lot 153 and 155 and 29, DEP file number 270-0748. So I think we don't need to do anything. Is that correct?
0 Small Lane has been continued to February 8th, and we did that at our last meeting.
Yeah. All right. So our next one is 31 Harold Ave, and it is Assessors Map 39, Lot 83, RCC file number 2022-6. Is there anyone here from Zero Small Lane, excuse me, 31 Harold Ave today?
Please use the reaction buttons and hit the raise hand function. The reaction button is located at the bottom of the screen. I did reach out to the applicants and send them an email and ask them as directed that the Conservation Commission would like to hear from them and like them to attend tonight's meeting. That email was not responded to.
And there seems to be nobody here from that applicant.
Mhm.
Okay, we've been carrying this a long time and it's an RDA, so I think it would make sense to have a vote on this and get this off our agenda until they decide to come back. There is one person in the waiting room, Chuck.
Sure, let's let them in and ask the same question again. I think this is for
Yeah.
Another Luanis.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this
right.
is for Luanis.
So maybe the best strategy for 31 Harold Ave is to close the hearing and then vote on whether to declare this a positive determination, which would require them to come back for an RDA.
So this is,
Sure.
this is Brian. Can I make a motion to close the hearing on 31 Harold Ave?
Second,
Brian
Okay.
Bowe in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Before we have a motion to issue the determination, we should have a discussion about next steps. So this RDA 2022-6 was advertised on June 8th, 2022, and the Conservation Commission had asked some questions, had some concerns, and was waiting for the applicant to get back to them. Several emails were over the course of several months were sent back and forth, and each time the applicant, towards the end of this, the last 2 to 3, they wanted to continue. My last email was not replied to from the applicant, so I did let them know that they should be at this meeting. They understand that we're looking for information, but I have not heard from them or their lawyer.
Okay.
So does the commission have a determination that they're considering? Or do you want to just tell me what you're considering and can figure out the determination?
So can I make a motion?
You sure
Make
can.
Make a
Well,
motion.
Martha.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we vote for a positive determination on 31 Harold Ave.
And
Sure.
the consequence of that would be they would need to come back with a notice of intent if they want to pursue this project.
Correct.
Sure. Can I just add something and maybe it can be amended into your motion? So the Conservation Commission, so for the intrusion, because of the intrusion from the construction into the conservation restriction area, and for the intrusion into the 35-foot zone as per section 3D1 and 2, and the commission is asking for a wider ZNV to protect the buffer zone from human and structures for impact potential. Positive determination is is being requested by Brian, and this is my, my additions. So, checking off B1 for the area that it's in, and that would include the conservation restriction area. And B2 for the boundaries, that we're not verifying the boundaries. And then B3 for the work in the buffer zone. No, B3 for the work that would be involved in the area in the conservation restriction that has happened already. And then B4 for the work in the buffer zone. So 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. I did not realize I was supposed to specify those things, but thank you.
Do we have a second for that motion?
This is John, I'll second.
Brian Bowe in favor?
Carl Ciccone in favor?
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. That's it. Next one is 20 Eastway. And we are to continue the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability filed by Alexander Arajo under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to remove 3 oak trees within the 35-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office and on the Conservation Division page under the project by year, Assessors Map 52, Lot 35, RCC file number 2022-18.
So could the applicant use the raise hand functions at the bottom of the page and the reactions button, the raise hand function, to let us know if you're here at the meeting?
And I think I made a mistake. I think it should say Lot 36.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great.
And can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Alexander Araujo.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Do you want to give us a quick explanation of why you need to have these trees removed?
Yes, the trees are leaning severely against my garage and the backyard of my property, and not only my backyard but also my neighbors. And since they're leaning so much, the tree expert told me that the best way to do it is remove them.
Sure, and I have a, well, thought I did. I thought I had a picture of this.
Yeah, I submitted some pictures with the application.
Okay. And before the previous meeting, we did have a few people go out and take a look to see what trees you were talking about. They had yellow caution tape on them so that we were able to identify them. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Does anybody from the commission want to speak to what we saw when we went out to see those trees? Brian?
Yeah, okay. So I was one of the people in the commission went out there. We had most of the commission out back on January 8th. The trees do have a lean to them. The lean aside, in general, they look to be healthy trees. The one in the middle is probably the least healthy looking of the 3. I don't think they'll be actually up against the garage, but there is a lean, as you can see from the picture that Chuck just put up. One thing I will note is that we did notice there's the new boundary stones for the conservation restriction. There were 2 of them that I can remember seeing that were quite visible. We also noted that there was lots of yard waste. there was a plastic pot, there was a dog fence or something like that back there. And so from my perspective, before we can ask questions from the commission, there is a lien. It doesn't look like there's an imminent danger of falling. But at this point, I'll be quiet for a while and let the commission ask questions.
Anybody else on the commission have comments, questions? It was a while ago, so it's a little while since we saw them. Andrew.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'll just agree with what Brian said. We visited on January 8th. There's no snow on the ground. I'm just looking at my pictures on my phone. There, obviously, you can see from the picture, there is a significant lean. But these are oaks, so they've been there for a while. Didn't notice anything from where we were. I couldn't stand there, get a good look at the roots to see if there's any signs of uprooting. But the trees looked healthy, and these aren't types of trees that tend to fall. I mean, these are oak trees. Sorry, they don't tend to fall very easily. So, I mean, Mike, if I have a question, how long have you lived in the home, and what does when do the concerns start to raise about, fearing that these trees might fall because they've been there for a long time?
Yes, I'll be living in this property for 3 years, and I believe the previous owner trimmed the trees because you could see on the top they were trimmed already. So I don't know if I should go that route or so it's always good to go through the conservation because to have a second opinion because I really don't want any danger to my property. That's my
Understood. So yeah, thanks for coming to talk with us. So that's my question at the moment. Not anything we need to think about next steps, but yeah, I see Carl has a hand up.
Okay, Carl?
Yeah, just a note, Brian, when you were there, I can see the kind of mounded yard waste. Look at the base of those trees, particularly the first oak tree. Did it seem like it was mounded around the trees a bit?
There was some, but I'd say more of it was back a ways. In fact,
Okay.
the line for the conservation restriction is just before the trees. So the trees are on conservation land.
Okay.
And so most of the debris is from this picture to the left of this picture.
Okay. I was just gonna say, because if there was a note to just keep those trees healthy as they look at least healthy, and we know that the oaks are stronger trees, but reducing the yard waste around that, right, causing some rot and things like that at the base could be helpful. But otherwise, I do agree that although in one picture they're leaning quite a bit, but they look light on top too. They don't look like they're heavy canopy or we could reduce some weight, but they don't look like they've got huge kind of canopies either. So, but
This picture doesn't really show where the branches from these trees go. Is this the only picture we
No.
have?
There's more pictures.
Can you see this next picture or do I have to? Okay,
There's more pictures.
Yeah. And there's
Stop here for a
clearly a dead tree in the corner, just off the corner of the fence. Is that on your property or on your neighbor's property?
I believe that's I'm not sure, but if it's on my property, it's right on the line. And regarding the yard waste, I don't understand because on my property there's no yard waste. I don't throw anything there. I have a sticker. I go to the town to dump my cuttings. So
Maybe that was from the people before you moved in?
yeah.
it could be from the people before, but it's not from me because I do have a sticker. I went to the police station and got a sticker for the past years to be able to go to the town. And regarding the trees, if you look at the pictures again, they're leaning very badly, especially number 1 and number 3. When there's wind, they're not protected. They don't have any other trees next to them, so they swing a lot back and forth. This is the best picture probably that shows the leaning.
Okay.
And they are located on the slope. So for what I understood from the tree expert, he did say that the roots are weaker on the slope side than on my side, and that's why that causes the tree to lean.
Do you have any plan for what to do to replace the trees that you want to take down?
I can replace them with other trees, or I believe there's a fund that you can. When I apply for the tree removal permit, I understood there's a fund that you can put on some money to plant other trees. So I am not sure the best way to go about it, but if I need to replace, plant new trees, I would do that.
And when we were out there, we saw these markers that show the border of the conservation restriction. And that does not seem to show up on this plot plan. Chuck, do you know anything about where the edge of the conservation restriction is?
So this is from 2012, this plan.
Mhm.
And yeah, so this is the edge of the conservation land right here. I hopefully you can see my cursor. I mean, right here, the property line.
Okay.
It may go over in this area a little bit, but I don't think it comes down to this other edge. We're having it surveyed at the moment, but my
Actually,
guess is it
Chuck,
comes in this way.
if I can jump in, we
Mhm.
saw 2 markers in particular. They were along the back straight line edge, but towards the middle or even left of middle. There were 2 clear granite boundary marker with the label of conservation restriction on them. So I was picturing that it was straight out from here that the conservation restriction was.
Okay. Well, there's, you're talking about this area over here. And is that where you saw it? Let me get
I
something
can't
here
see
to
where your
mark
cursor
it.
is.
Hold on a second.
It looked to us like the conservation markers were pretty much at the fence line and not what it is 5 or 6 feet back.
Mhm.
That was the puzzling part.
Right, when we looked over the fence, it was within a foot, 18 inches of the bottom of the fence.
So in that area.
Yes, I think so.
And even a little bit to the left, because there were 2 of them, some distance apart that we saw.
So the key question why we're asking that is, are these trees protected in a conservation easement, or are they just inside the 35-foot buffer, but not inside a conservation restriction in some way? And I'm scrolling on my phone to see if I can find any pictures that I might have taken of these trees.
So it's, I did not review the conservation restriction in this area. But typically, with the approval of the Conservation Commission, tree removal is approved in that. As long as the Conservation Commission approves, there shouldn't be an issue. Similar to the language that we just reviewed for another lot in Reading.
Chuck, what's the distance, do you think, from where the fence line is drawn there, around where the trees are drawn in, to the somewhat angled edge of property?
Um,
How far would you guesstimate that is?
I'm gonna say right down here where it says 12 feet. Helps you with this
Yeah.
width here, helps you up here.
Yeah, so then I would say something is off from this drawing, because definitely standing at the fence line and noticing the two conservation restriction markers, it wasn't 12 plus feet.
Maybe those markers were the edge of the zone of natural vegetation, which would be 25 feet from the wetland and 10 feet in from the dotted line.
Yeah,
Wonder if that's what those were supposed to be marking.
Yeah, I just know it was a black background and the writing said conservation restriction. There may have been other text on it that I didn't read or remember.
Okay. Can we go back to the picture of the trees where we can see them leaning with all their branches over the property? The one in the furthest background in this picture seems to have basically no branches on the left side of the fence, and all the weight of the tree is leaning on the side of the fence that has the little garden shed in it. So I can't see a way that one could trim that to have more of the weight leaning the other way, because there's nothing on the left side of this picture. What do other people think about that?
Yeah, and I also just don't think that the crowns are very heavy, right? Like there's some large canopy trees that are leaning that might have another leader or second leader, right? That's not helping, but I mean they don't look like they're very heavy. You know, I know there's leaves in the trees, but they're not. They're long, but they're not very heavy looking to me. So.
And what does that imply, Carl? That they would be less likely to fall, or that they're not very healthy? When you say they're not very heavy, what does that?
I think it's just a have like just where they're maybe they're looking for some sunlight. I think they look healthy to me. I think just the heavy just means that sometimes if it was multi-leader or another big branch coming off or something, that would be weighing it down, but they don't look like they're very that's happening, which is better for the tree.
So you'd be inclined not to think they need to be removed?
I'm leaning that way, but I mean, there's no, you can't cable it, you can't support it. Like you said, there's nothing behind the tree, right? So maybe we could determine if there was, of the three, what's the most risk factor, I don't know.
The middle one looks the least healthy, but
Mhm.
even then, I didn't see any stress indicators. I didn't see any sign of loose soil around the roots. But the middle one is definitely the outlier.
So has the arborist with the recipient here, well, sorry, I forget his name. Has the
Alexander.
arborist
Yes.
has the arborist indicated to you that this type of tree, typically just holds up well and is if it's a strong, healthy tree? I just want to make sure we're not what we're saying is just because of the type of tree, the oak tree, right? If it was a leaning pine or something, I think we'd all maybe would feel differently, but these trees typically are quite strong. They seem to be fairly healthy. They're very robust environmental trees, right? They offer a lot of, habitat. So I think that's just where we're trying to figure out.
Right, and if I could say something, when I was there, it seemed to me that the trees were growing towards the light, and supporting that thought was the fact that as you went up the tree, most of the branches growing off the main trunk were growing upward. So in other words, also towards the light. So to me, it looked like, first of all, those main trunks had been there a while because it was time for these fairly significant branches to grow off of it. And if Chuck could go back to the pictures, you could see that on some of them. So I definitely had the impression that there wasn't imminent concern with falling. Yes, I was swayed by there being oak trees, but also by the growth on top of that trunk.
Mhm.
Have you all had a chance to read the letter from Mass Tree Removal? Anyone that wants to?
Okay, I think we've had a lot of discussion. I don't know. Oh, Andrew, you've got your hand up. Okay. Andrew.
I don't have much to add, Martha, but I mean, from a conservation point of view, they seem like they're okay, but as a sympathetic to the homeowner, when you could look at those pictures and you see
The lean.
there is a significant lean to them. And if they're on my home, I don't know how I would feel. I don't have a leaning tree like that on the back, my backyard. So I am sympathetic to that. I guess just I would want to know what the plan is in terms of if we take these down, what we'd agree upon to do to replace the lost healthy oaks. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if it gets decided tonight or if we continue.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's see what the the replacement would be, and the homeowner has said they would be willing to plant trees or pay into the tree fund. I would sort of like to see trees planted in the area where these are removed from.
Right.
If we allow these trees to be removed.
You
Is
might.
the
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
is the proposed, okay, sorry if I missed this, proposed hot tub location and, are those things proceeding? Oh, that's the hot tub, sorry. Oh, the call out's like so far the hot tub, never mind. I was saying because there is a good chunk of land there for possible replacement even inside the fence too, right? Just to get some room there, I guess, but. Because I was going to say, to answer Andrew, your question, if we were going to do that, I would like to see another oak planted. I mean, why not? It would take 75 years for it to get, 60 feet tall, but that's going to be a lot of open canopy there. And, they're right, the number one kind of native habitat tree with what they do. So maybe that would be where I would start with. Maybe what could we get something similar in there, I guess.
Right, so Alexander, does that sound like a reasonable plan to you? If we allowed these 3 trees to be taken down, could you replace them with 3 oaks in nearly the same area?
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, can you call out the caliper of the tree you'd like to have it planted?
Do we
Uh,
often do 2.5-inch caliper?
Yeah.
We often do 3, so
Ah.
anything different would be okay, but just let us know.
So Martha, maybe I could, so I think for a lot of like native ornamentals or flowering trees, that's 3 is great. And maybe for something like a large, like something like an oak tree, I would think 2.5 or something would be okay too, just because it might come in a bit bigger and taller anyway. So, um, but yeah, I think that would be, and maybe I can I can try to stop by there too, and just, I know we're not playing designer here, but just because those trees will, of course, end up growing right large someday. Maybe 3 isn't the answer, but one, or at least 1 or 2, right? Maybe there's a donation in there, right? Just to give these trees the room they need to work.
Okay.
But-
So you think what we wouldn't need to have all 3 replacement trees go in that same spot where we're taking out these big trees?
Right. It'd be nice to be in that area, right? To be along that buffer, but I don't know if 3 is the answer, just because of, we don't want to put them in harm's way again. Meaning the trees themselves, give them some room and air to grow, right? And live. But I think 2 would be a great start. That'd be great. It's manageable.
Okay.
And
All right.
actually, as an added condition, I would want to see some of the debris beyond the fence be picked up. And that would include some of the piles of leaves, but also, the man-made things like the plastic pots, whatever that dog fence type thing was.
Okay.
As long as you're gonna be disturbing the area, you might as well disturb it in a positive way.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead, Alexander.
Like I said previously, the yard waste, it's not mine. I don't know where we're gonna go. Like, the leaves, picking up leaves, they're not my leaves either. They're the leaves from the trees that fall. So now regarding the new oak trees that we intend to plant in this area, do you guys think that behind the garage would be a good idea, or maybe some other place where there's more room to them to grow within the conservation land? Because I know behind those big trees that I want to remove, there's other trees, so we can do it in the same vicinity, but it would be probably better to do it, in another location, probably more to the right, or more to the back, or more to the left. I don't know. Something that you guys should look at it and let me know how you want to proceed.
Is that something that we could have the conservation administrator come out and consult with you on the exact location of the replacement trees? If we vote on putting some in today, but have him come out and do the locating of the trees with you?
Yes, that would be great. Yes.
Chuck, would that be okay with you?
No, that's fine.
Okay. I'm just also noticing that there is no shed on this plan, and there's clearly a shed in the pictures. Did you get a permit for a shed at a different time after this plot plan was made?
When I purchased, no, this plot plan was from 2012, I believe, from Lusk. That was the previous owner of this property. I purchased this property in 2019, and the shed was installed already.
Okay.
And I believe on the G's map from the town of Reading, that we have a shed on the property. I have over here a map, a property map from the town of Reading, and the shed, it's on the property right next to the
Okay.
fence.
All right.
I
And
have,
the,
I have a
the-
picture of it actually with me if you want to
yeah,
see it.
okay. All right, I was just curious because it's not on this proposed here. Okay, so it sounds like the consensus is if we vote in favor of allowing these trees to be removed, that we would ask for 2 trees to be put in with consulting with the conservation administrator on the exact placement of those 2 replacement oaks, and that the homeowner work to remove any man-made debris from the slope behind the fence that might be in that area. And that's what I've heard. I think Brian also was concerned about whether the piles of leaves were deeper than they should be. And Andrew has his hand up first. So let me call on Andrew, and then Brian, we can call on you next. Andrew.
So yeah, all this sounds good. So specifically, Carl suggested 2 oak trees to replace, but I always like a 1-for-1 tree. So I don't know if there's another tree we could recommend so that we're planting 3 trees. I think I agree with Carl, 3 oak trees in that general area was crowded as it was. So 2 seems more sensible, but is there one more type of tree that might be appropriate that we could
Yeah.
plant?
And I guess, Andrew, I was thinking, could the 3rd be a tree donation? Or would we rather see a 3rd, a 1-to-1? So we rather see 3 trees planted, correct? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
my preference, but yeah,
Yeah.
if that, I'm okay with a donation if that makes sense. Everyone
But
What
I
agrees.
hear
about-
you though. Yeah.
What about 3 trees and 2 shrubs? And you could have a couple of native shrubs contributing to that area. I mean, 2 trees and 2 shrubs replacing the 3 trees. Andrew, what does that sound like to you?
Yeah, that's typically what the tree policy suggests. I like trees more than shrubs, but there's nothing against shrubs.
Yeah, I think if we choose to do a third something, it should be a tree. This location just looks like there's a lot of existing vegetation. I think a tree might just do a little bit better from what I've just Google Earth and everything, and just so. But I guess that's the question: what the commission wants to do. 2 in a donation, or 2 oaks and then maybe a flowering tree, right? We could do that. So it all sounds good to me.
Any suggestions of what kind of flowering tree you're talking about?
How about a Eastern redbud?
I like Eastern redbuds.
Sure, that would give some color back there.
Okay,
So-
Brian, did you have something you wanted to say? Is Brian still here?
Yeah, he's muted, I think.
I was trying to get back to that page, yes. What I was going to suggest is when Chuck goes out to make some suggestions on the planting area, I'd be happy to tag along and to look at the piles. First of all, to second guess my own judgment, and second of all, to just nail down whether or not it is artificially high or not. So in other words, I'd be happy to make a visit back there to look at the leaves.
Okay,
And I'm sure Chuck needs the company.
okay, we've been at this a while. Do we have a plan? And can somebody make a motion and we can move forward?
Just make sure the motion includes Brian's remove the leaves if needed, or something to that effect, because he's going to check it out. We
Okay.
can't go back to this after tonight.
Okay. Anybody comfortable phrasing a motion, or shall I suggest one and somebody then move that motion?
Can you make a motion to close and then discuss it and then make a motion to issue with the conditions?
Okay, all
So-
right.
So I'll do that. This is Brian, and I'll make the motion to close the hearing on 20 Eastway.
Okay,
Second. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. Carl seconded, all right.
Right. Brian Bowe in favor.
John Sullivan in
Yeah.
favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, so we've closed the hearing. If we are approving to have these trees removed, it would be a negative determination, and it would need to have certain conditions included in that negative determination of applicability. And a negative determination would allow the homeowner to take these trees down.
So this is Brian. I will make a motion that we issue a negative determination with the following conditions. That there be 2 replacement trees at a location to be advised on by Chuck Teroni. And in the process to remove for sure any man-made debris that's behind the fence, and to remove the yard waste if it turns out to be applicable.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that? I
course.
think we were talking 2 oaks and a redbud.
Fair enough, you're right. I was off looking at the other picture, yes. I agree.
This is Andrew, I'll second that.
And let me just make sure we get just a couple of items in here. So cut the trees down, and with the fact that they're on the slope, no grinding, just cut them as flush as possible to the ground. I was going to ask Carl what he thought of that, but I thought stabilizing the bank was important. Use a crane and then remove all the site, remove all the material from the site. I'm talking about the debris that would be caused by removing the trees. Make sure that that's clean. And that's it.
So with those amendments, is that seconded?
Andrew Driven, I'll second.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, so Mr. Arojo, would you contact the conservation administrator when you are ready to have the trees removed, and also have him and Brian come out to look at the locations of the replacement trees and the look at the leaf litter and see what needs to be done about the litter and the debris.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay. We're done with that one. Ready to move on? The next hearing is 295 Main Street. And we are opening the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability filed by Danny Cerqueras Construction LLC under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to replace the existing decking and railings on the 16 exterior decks. The existing decking support framing will remain, and all of the decks will be accessed by using a lift parked on the paved parking lot. Portions of the work are within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and riverfront area. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office and on the Conservation Division page under Current Project, Assessor's Map 12, Lot 44, RCC file number 2023-03. Is the applicant here?
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to describe your project, Danny?
Yeah. So basically, the Quantum Association hired me to remove and replace. So this picture here. So we're going to remove and replace the existing railings. The existing railings, they don't meet code height. So we're going to be replacing those with RDI railings, 41-inch RDI railings. So we'll remove the railings and we're going to add a post midway. So the railings on the front will be roughly 5 foot railings with a post. And the railings on the sides will remain the same with no posts. Those are about 4 foot, let's say 4'6" roughly. So basically the demo on this is just removing the railings and the decking. The framing is in great shape. We have to add some blocking, and that's about it really. I have my lift on site right now. So I proposed, all the work would be done from the lift. I could reach all of this with the lift from the parking lot. And I would put construction fence around the whole area so no one walks in that area. I was gonna also put the sock if needed. But I don't see a lot of debris falling when we do the demo on this.
You say you're going to replace 16 decks. Is this picture showing us 8 decks and then there's 8 more on the other side of the building?
So there's actually, there's, I believe it's 32 decks total. So this side this would be 8 decks. So we have 4 stories, 2 units per floor.
Okay.
So I basically call it individual decks. They're one-piece decks, but they're technically 2 decks per floor.
Okay. And the big concern is this stream right next to the place where these decks are.
Correct.
So it's my understanding that the decks on the opposite side of the building are far enough away from the stream that we're not judging them. We're just voting on this location. Is that correct?
Correct. There's a picture image of this on the right side. Well, from the street, it'll be the left side. And there's also decks on the front of the building, which are not close to the stream.
Okay. So it's just this group of 8 that are the ones that are impacting the wetland that we need to be concerned about.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions from the commission about this project? Andrew.
I don't really have any questions. I mean, I did a quick drive-by, drove through the parking lot this afternoon, and I didn't even realize that there was a stream that close. I know I saw the water at the end of the parking lot, but I didn't realize that the stream actually went right next to those balconies. So when I did a drive-by, I didn't realize, I thought this was going to be super easy, that there was no impact at all. But so this is the south side of the building that I'm looking at right now in that picture?
Correct.
Okay. How far to the stream is that? I mean, is the picture deceiving? It looks very close.
It's when I measured it to the stream, it's about 8 feet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, there's not gonna, I agree. So you're taking out the railing and the decking.
We would access from the lift, and we would basically, all these railings are gonna come off. These are aluminum railings. They're gonna come off in one piece. We're not gonna have any debris fall from the railings. The decking is 5-quarter PT decking, which is solid. It's not rotted. Those will come up in one piece also. I don't see a lot of debris falling down. If it does, I feel it would stay close, where we would just go in there and just do a quick cleanup. I don't see anything major.
Yeah, I mean, I personally agree. I don't see anything intentionally falling into the stream, but maybe like a small silt fence just around there, just in case, just more of a.
Yeah, so I
things
propose,
happen.
yeah, so that double line, I propose to do the sock in the fence, and I was also going to do a construction fence around the whole area to keep everybody out, just in case, if I'm not on site, just keep all employees out of that area completely. As you can see, people walk through there constantly because you can see the path of people walking. But it's
Yeah,
pretty straightforward of a job.
yeah. Okay, I agree.
Brian?
Yeah, so you've made the point that the railing should come out in one piece and what have you, but have you given any thought to what is likely just accidental debris from the workers? I don't know, cigarette
Yes.
butts, candy
Yep.
wrappers, anything?
Yeah, so I also proposed, I forget who I talked to, a conservation, I forget his name, but I said I could put a net. I have a mesh net that we use quite often. When it comes to like high winds and stuff when we do work. I could staple the mesh fence on the posts, kind of when we're up high, if there's like, stuff that could blow. I could do that also.
So if you do that, then is the lift with the workers outside of that net, or how does that work?
So we would put the fence on outside of the net. When we would work on the decks. So the lift would basically bring the guys up to work on the decks. The lift's more on site right now to kind of make everything easier, to set up a net, get the guys up and down without using ladders. Basically without disturbing the area
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I understand. I was there today also, and I did see the lift on the side of the parking lot. So if the guys are working on the deck and the mesh is outside of them, then if there is any debris, the net should catch it.
Yeah, the net will catch it.
And just to confirm, you said you're not going to do anything about the support beams. There's no footer work that you have to do.
No.
Okay, and a little bit off topic. When you got this permitted in the beginning, why did you choose the back right for the dumpster and the recycling bins, since that's only 10 feet from Walker Brook?
Dumpster, I don't think I proposed an area. Did I? So
I actually don't know. I wasn't on the commission then.
yeah, I don't think we proposed. I have my own dumpster truck, so I could actually put the dumpster. We could even live load out of there. It doesn't matter how we do it. I could keep the dumpster on the other side of the parking lot also, but I don't think I proposed an area for the dumpster. I did propose.
I'm just noting that we're talking about preventing debris from workers falling, and yet there's this dumpster area to the back right, which is every bit as close. So if you could move that across the parking lot, so it's essentially in the back left, I'd be happier that it's that much further away from Walker Brook.
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. Let me see. Oh yeah, right here. Okay.
So Brian, just a
Just look at
second,
it,
Brian, are
Kate.
you talking about an existing dumpster that gets trash from the building residents?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah,
this
that's
is
not
the person we're talking to is not the building owner, it's the construction person for this project.
Well, that explains that. Okay.
Yeah, I was a little confused there.
Yeah.
But I'll live load out of there daily. So that there'll be no dumpster on site as far as mine. I did put a staging area, which is close to it's in the parking lot, but it is close to the area.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I see that on the picture here.
So
So,
that staging
so
area,
I will for now withdraw my question about the dumpster. I can talk to Chuck offline.
okay.
Okay, so,
With that, Martha, back to you, Martha.
yeah. I just have a question of, how do you get the planking and the railings from the 4th floor and the 3rd floor down to the ground when you're doing this project?
We'll bring it all down in the lift. So
Okay.
so the decking that's there now, they're 8-foot pieces. We'll basically cut them in halves with the skill saw, and then we'll just put them in the lift and bring them down as much as we can at a time.
Okay, so you're not dropping them from four floors up or dropping them down a chute or anything like that. You're
Nope,
gonna
we're gonna-
carry them down.
Correct, and the lift's got a max capacity in the basket. So we can only do so much at a time, so that's that area. That stack of decks is gonna be a kind of a slow go for us. But we'll basically put everything on the basket, lower it, go back up, get more, bring it back down.
Okay. Okay, Chuck, do you have any comments on this project?
Sure. After the erosion control is set up, I'd like to do a pre-activity meeting on the site, but I agree with the comments made that with the mesh netting and some sort of construction fencing to keep people from walking too close to the fence, and with the agreement that if anything falls, it's picked up right away in the stream, not waited to the next day or the end of the day. I think those would be the best we can do in this area.
And are there any people in the general public who are here at this hearing who would like to have input on this today? If so, please use the reaction button and raise your hand. Okay. I don't see any general public. Is there any further discussion needed on this proposal? Not seeing any, can I have a motion? This is again an RDA, so we want to close the hearing and then we're looking for a negative determination if they're going to do this project.
This is Andy. I'll make a motion to close a public hearing for 295 Main Street.
This is Brian,
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, that was seconded by Brian. Let's vote.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, and can we have a motion?
This
I
is
saw
Brian.
Chuck's finger go up. Did you want to comment, Chuck?
I didn't hear you, Andy, what did you say?
I saw Chuck, you wanted to say something earlier. Did you want to add something before we?
So I just want to make sure that you're not approving the wetland delineation. So just add in positive 2B.
Okay, so this is Brian. I make a motion that we issue a negative determination, but with the condition of 2B being positive.
And what conditions are we putting on the project itself?
When we run through the conditions,
Yes, please.
straw wattle and construction fence along the work area to be reviewed by the conservation administrator prior to work. Mesh netting stapled to the support beams to prevent debris from falling in. Any debris that falls will be picked up immediately. And that is what I had. Anything else at this point that I forgot?
The diagram shows a silt fence next to the 16-inch mulch tube filter fabric.
We don't want that.
Okay, we don't want that.
It's just, so that's compacted soil with moss on it. We don't want to dig in the apron of the silt fence. It would just cause too much problem. So if we were going to go in that direction, that's why I recommended having the straw wattle and orange construction fencing would probably be enough.
Okay,
But we can determine that in the field.
okay. All right, so that page, we just are not doing the thing that's illustrated on that page. We just want to make that clear.
The Conservation Commission can make any determinations they want and make any conditions they want. We don't have to go with what's on the page or what's being proposed.
Perfect. Okay. So we have a motion, we have conditions. Was that motion seconded?
I think it was, right?
I'll second that.
Your second.
Brian Brown in
That was-
favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor, and that was Andrew Driven who seconded the motion. Okay, we are done with that. You are approved to do your project. Get in touch with Chuck when you are ready to have your pre-construction meeting.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yes. Good night.
Okay. We next on the agenda have 50 Joanna Drive. Open the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability filed by Ciro Federa under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to construct a 42 square foot addition with a proposed front porch within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and riverfront area. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office and on the Conservation Division page under Current Project Assessors Map 23, Lot 121, RCC file number 2023-01. And it looks like Giovanni is here to represent this project. Is there anybody else here as well?
I believe the applicants may be on. And if they are, maybe just for any answering of questions or whatnot, but for
Yeah.
the most part, I can take it.
So I've given them permission to unmute and turn on their video if they'd like to, or if they'd like to
Sure.
stay silent, that's fine. I'm going to put up the plans so we can speak about this.
So the wetlands, I'm Giovanni Federa with Federa Engineering for the record. When the property was surveyed, we had the wetlands in the rear, which were not delineated, and the stream to the that's the east, that was also not delineated. So the wetlands that are shown on site and the resource areas that are shown on site are based on the GIS from the town GIS. And it was just graphically plotted into the computer system to kind of fit within this area. So they're very proximate locations. But from what it's showing is the proposed additions in the front, and it's just going to bump out about 3.5 feet, and it's going to be about a little over 12 feet wide. And the front porch, which is more on the east side, closer to the stream, it's still a good approximately 70 feet plus or minus feet away from the stream. And the proposed addition, it will have a standard foundation wall, and then the front porch will have piers, concrete column piers going into the ground as support. But it's it's a very self-explanatory project. It's a small addition. The addition's really being added to just help the general layout of inside. It's being fully rehabbed, and we're happy to discuss. And I know the applicant had purchased the property just about I think it was a few months back. So it's a new property for them. Anything that was done previously in the backyard or the side yards, they haven't touched. Basically, I'm saying is they haven't really touched anything on the outside. So yeah.
I'm sorry, we're just chiming in right now.
Yep. And from when I went out on site and I looked at the wetlands myself, and it looks like the GIS and what we have shown here is very conservative. I believe it looks like the wetlands are really more like along the back property line, but for discussion purposes, this is what we have. So I don't know, Maria, would you want to add to anything or just open it up to the commission?
Well, just like yeah, open it up to commission, but like you said, we purchased the property back in September,
September.
October, I'm sorry. And we really haven't done anything to the back, so yeah.
So we'll open it up to discuss with the commission.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. All right. Anybody on the commission? Did anybody get a chance to go out and visit this property and can make a report on having gone by to see it? I had hoped to go on Monday and then it snowed. So I didn't go. Okay, nobody's been there. Okay,
I mean, this is Andrew. I did a quick drive. Again, I didn't have a lot of time. I did drive by. Like, I saw some workers at the sites doing some things. So there's definitely work happening there. I drove to the end of the cul-de-sac and I could see the stream was extremely close to the home. I didn't measure, and I didn't do anything more than that. So all I can do is acknowledge that there is work being done at the home and that there is a stream nearby.
okay. Okay, so the proposed porch is in front of the brick face and the bay window, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the stream is on the other side of the parked truck.
That is correct.
Okay,
Is it right there, Giovanni, or is it further in?
It's
for-
it's a little further up. The plan that we have, it's more accurate than the wetlands. The stream is definitely so the plan is pretty close from
Right.
its location because we got the aerial view and we kind of matched it with the aerial view, so it's pretty close. But yeah, it's right kind of where that the red dot, that red pointer is.
Sure, we did stream stats for this area, and it's definitely a perennial stream. Has more than a quarter-mile drainage area. So I just wanted to make sure that, so this work is in the first 100 foot of the riverfront.
okay.
Correct.
And then for people that are interested, I guess the only other thing that we want to look at quickly is, let me leave that up there and go here, is to look at these stats on the plan. Right here, lot coverage. So existing 7.5%, proposed 7.7%.
Okay. Which is considerably under the maximum of 25%.
Right, but that's kind of like an allowance for zoning, where we would be interested in the 10% within the first 100 feet of the riverfront.
Okay,
And
and it's still under
so
10.
that's what, Andy, I didn't want to take your thunder, sorry. I just wanted to show all that, kind of knowing that you were going to be talking next.
Okay, Andrew.
I think Brian has his hand. Oh, did you take your hand down, Brian? Yeah, I
The
mean,
next one I was going to talk about was the square footage. So Chuck beat me to it.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I didn't really need to see much more in my quick analysis. It looked like it would be a positive determination. I didn't need to spend much more time than my quick drive-by. I think we are owed a little bit more information about what's happening and how we're going to prevent the debris from going into the river, and then just addressing these larger concerns. Is it within does it meet the riverfront standards and all that jazz?
So the riverfront standards, it does allow alteration of up to 5,000 square feet on a parcel. And so this is well under that for sure.
No, the riverfront standards for redevelopment allow up to 10% of the site. So you have about
It's
1,800
10%
square feet.
10% or 5,000 square feet, whichever is larger.
No, I'm familiar from a different project. That's if it's a clear, it's if you're starting with the new site where there's no already, or there's no development. We're dealing with a redevelopment here. But even if it's not exceeding the riverfront standards, you're still so close to the riverfront that I think it would be good to know how you're, and I see all the construction, how you're making sure nothing gets into the stream over there. And that's
We would be happy to, put straw wattles as a barrier on the right side of the driveway.
And it's up to other folks. I'm on the commission. From my point of view, it seems like a positive determination. It would just be a notice of intent, but I know that's a bunch of paperwork and other things, but I'm not saying no to the project. I just think.
So you should go through that. So you should go through that, but I can pick it up where you left off. So if you wanted to, or you can go, or you can do it, Andy, but I think that it's important to, understand that this is a riverfront and that we want to, that the existing impervious area has to be calculated into that 10% or 5,000 square feet. So I was just wondering, what is the total amount of the existing square impervious area? Giovanni, do you have that?
I can run that calculation real quick. Can you just zoom on? I think we were at 7.5% of the property. So the property is, I don't have my CAD software in front of me, but just running from what we have, the property is 17,876 times 0.075.
This is without the addition.
This is without the addition. So
Yep.
it's approximately 1,300, so 1,340.
So 1,340. Okay, so
and then adding 42 square feet as the addition. So we're still very well under the 5,000 square foot mark.
And it looked like the driveway to the right of the building is not paved. Is that correct?
so just to make sure that we stay on topic, sorry, Martha, but the 5,000 square feet, which was Andy Driven was trying to say, does not exist in the redevelopment. You have to meet the 10%. You don't get that alteration. I believe that's what he's saying, and I'm looking at the regulations now quickly to make sure that that's correct. So anything over 10%, if you've, with this project and this addition, if you're over 10% of the riverfront, you need to mitigate or restore to move forward with your project. So that's why we were kind of interested in the numbers and interested in whether you met that standard or not.
That's right. But if he's saying 1,400 square feet, basically, he's still under the 10%.
So, okay. Okay.
Giovanni, that number you gave us, was that just for the house, or did that include the driveway, which gets back to?
That's for the house. So lot coverage by definition is for the house.
Well, no, going back to the riverfront, the reason we know the riverfront, we just lived through it. And so we're looking at how much square footage there is of impervious. So is your driveway impervious or pervious?
The driveway is impervious.
Okay, so that needs to be added into the total on top of the house.
Okay, now we can do that real quick. I mean, there's, let me pull something up real quick. So I can get approximate numbers right now, and I'm happy to do that. Let's see, so.
Can I just, why was this submitted as a RDA and not an NOI? Or how is that
Because it's a
determined?
42, it's pretty, 42-foot addition, square foot addition on an existing house. That's on top of existing lawn.
And already lawn, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's appropriate. I do think that you could ask for, if the numbers don't work out, some mitigation or some restoration. And if the numbers work out, then it can be approved. I don't agree that we have to have a notice of intent to do that, but you guys can make your own decision.
So Giovanni, did you get a answer on the driveway?
I'm getting approximate values real quick right now.
So
It
real
looks
quick,
like the driveway is anywhere between, it's approximately maybe 1,200 square feet. And that's just using online area maps.
the driveway is 1,200
1,200 square feet approximately.
on top of the 1,400-ish for the house
Yeah.
itself. So then if I'm looking at that right, then that puts you over the 10%, does it not? Because the property is 17,000 and change. So 10% is 1,700 and change. And from what you just said, the driveway.
However, the alteration would just be 42 square feet.
Right, but as we've just learned, it's cumulative. And so it's the overall for the property itself. So that would include the house, the driveway, the addition would be looked at. And then I don't know if you have porch.
This is all pre-existing though. All the area that's on site right now is pre-existing before that date that's in the Wetland Protection Act. So
I understand. That's why Andy talked about the redevelopment. That's the clause that's in question here.
is that 10% or 5,000 square feet? Is that in the WPA or is that local bylaws?
That's in the WPA, but it's in the riverfront, not in the redevelopment. So we're in 585 at this moment.
I am very well aware of the WPA bylaws from the riverfront as well. So, and I've worked
That's great.
I've worked on plenty of riverfront projects before, and it's always been argued that it's 10% or 5,000 square feet in every project I've worked on before. The commissions have always agreed on that. So this is news to me about the 5,000 square feet not applying here.
But Giovanni, the way to look
I'm happy to argue it.
Sure. Why don't you just return to the riverfront standards, look at 585 E.
So now the question is, right, 10% is what's allowed to be altered, correct?
Well, it's 10%. You can't have a degraded, so basically, if you already have an area greater than 10%, then you can keep that amount, but you have to mitigate or restore the difference. So like if it's 42 square feet, then that's what you're going to have to mitigate or restore. I think you get to keep whatever's there. So like getting into the numbers and getting into the Wetlands Protection Act, it doesn't really matter because we know that your project is 42 square feet. At the end of the day, that's all you would have to either do a planting area in that much, or you'd have to repair the riverfront in that area, 42 square feet. That's what it says. So that's why I wanted you to look at E on 585, because it doesn't mention the 5,000 square feet. You'll find that in just the riverfront. When it's,
So this
you
is
know, like
section 10.58,
5.
5E.
Yep.
Now, okay. I'll okay. I'll take your word for it. I mean, I don't want to be looking at the fine.
Yeah, it's confusing. And again,
Yeah.
we just had a big project that was all about riverfront. So it's,
Okay.
we'll talk to the DEP, all that. Pretty clear with what needs to happen.
Okay.
So that's my interpretation of what needs to happen. I'm sure others may chime in, but I think that the comments where you get to keep the existing impervious, but if you're over the 10%, you have to mitigate or restore for the difference. That's as I understand it.
Chuck, and let me.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt?
Let me just ask Chuck a clarifying question. So you're talking about the addition. Does the proposed porch count as additional square footage that would have to be mitigated for?
It's so minimal though.
And because it's like it's suspended and all that, it's up to you guys. I thought it would be when I was looking at this afternoon, but again, these are all calls that the Conservation Commission can make.
Okay, but even then, you put those two together, it's still somewhat under 150 square feet. So you're looking at mitigation or restoration of that amount. So it's not a game ender, Giovanni. It's just something that you would have to address.
We have to make the driveway impervious.
Is there anybody who's been trying to talk who is one of the homeowners?
Yes, my name is Gino Figueroa. And what Giovanni said, you have what, 12,000 square feet on the driveway? How did you come up with that?
By using online mapping. Now it's very approximate. It could be 1,000, it could be 1,200, but for discussion purposes, now that we're here right now, I figured to just try to get an approximate value.
Because the driveway is about 12 feet wide by maybe 30 feet in length, approximately. Because if you're looking at it from the aerial map, it really can't see it.
So it may be well under 1,200 square feet.
It may be. It may
So I
be.
just did using the GIS, using the markup tools, measure, polygon. I came out with 868.
Okay.
Probably conservative, but I don't really think it's, it's good enough. So I got 868. And I actually, with some of that, I actually went out into the cul-de-sac area where I probably shouldn't have. Could do it again quickly.
So I'm just going to suggest there's a lot of questions here that we may want to continue this hearing and have the applicant come back with actual numbers and have had a chance to look over the regulations and understand them better. But are there other questions that members of the commission have that we could propose tonight so that when the applicant comes back next week, they also would have answers to any of those questions?
I think we're talking about you being over, technically, I mean, read over the regulations, Giovanni. I mean, technically it's 10% of the riverfront area, not 10% of the lot. So it's going to be a little bit less than 17,800.
Well,
But anyhow, we're talking like
riverfront. The riverfront is the parcel isn't entirely within the riverfront.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess it is 200 feet of the riverfront. So yeah, so we're talking about 1,800 square feet is the number, the upper limit. You're probably around, let's just say 2,300. So we're like 500 over and I'm just throwing some numbers out there. So I think like for the previous plan we did talked about, they ended up doing like plantings along the driveway as a mitigation. And I think something similar could be proposed here. I'm not sure what is existing between the driveway and the stream right now, but that's that worked for them. But plantings are usually a good way of mitigating. And how much is kind of a game, right? How do you figure out what is 500 square feet worth of plantings? You just make your best guess at what seems appropriate, and we'll discuss.
I was also going to ask, are there any invasives on the property? That's another way of mitigating for work, is if there are invasives that might be able to be removed when you're doing the plantings. You know, something like that is another possibility. Are there any kinds of debris that need to be cleaned up? That's another question that I'd love to have you come back with an answer for. And then my other question, you know, we're just looking at this outside the house, a little bit of a porch addition, but your plot plan package has a whole lot of work going on renovating the basement. And I'm curious where your construction dumpster is going to be and what kinds of things you are planning to do to keep any of the construction debris from ending up in the wetland or in the river. So do you have an answer to that question tonight?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I have a dump truck that actually any debris goes inside the truck, and we don't have a dumpster on site. So all the debris goes in the truck, and it gets removed from the property.
Okay, so it gets removed every day.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And is there any need for any sort of construction fence or anything like that to keep stuff from blowing into the river or into the wetland during construction?
Well, there's no debris outside. We contain everything inside.
Okay.
And it goes into the dump truck and it gets removed daily.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else on the commission with any other questions that we want to ask the applicant? Chuck, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the applicant understood that if you find yard waste out there, that's mitigation, and that can be part of the mitigation package you put together to make up the difference.
Is there anybody in the general public that's here at tonight's hearing who wanted to have something to say? And if so, you can use the reaction button at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. I don't see any. So I would love to have a motion to continue the hearing and give Giovanni a chance to talk to Chuck and sort out exactly what the regulations say between now and the next meeting. So we're not spending a lot of time
I think first
arguing regulations.
we need to ask Giovanni whether he's amenable to a continuance.
Okay.
Yeah, we can continue it. That works.
Okay, in that case, this is Brian. I make a motion to continue 50 Johanna Drive to February 8th.
All right.
This is John, I'll second.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Just trying to get to my agenda again. Give me a second.
Lot 5.
All right. Lot 5 Grove Street, is that the next one?
That is.
Okay. Here we go. Grove Street, Lot 5, across from 374 Grove Street, open the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability by Fidel Maltese, the Reading Town Manager, under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, Section 40, and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to construct a gravel parking lot with 17 parking spaces, including 2 handicap accessible spaces, and a guardrail along Grove Street. 2 portable toilet areas are proposed and 25 trees are proposed to be cut down, but only one of the trees is located in the 100-foot buffer zone. Application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office and on the Conservation Division page under Projects by Year, Assessor's Map 44, Lot 24, RCC file number 2023-02. And who's here speaking on this project?
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Megan Kearns, and I'm a wetland scientist with Weston and Sampson. And with me as well is James Pearson, if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm James Pearson. I'm the engineer for the project.
And we're here this evening to present the Grove Street parking lot project. Chuck, were you planning to share the plans, or would you like me to share the plans?
I have them available if you want,
Okay.
but if I can put them out, it's easy, but if you want to like scroll around, it might be easier for you to do it. So
Nope, that's fine. I'll
Me.
let you
Great.
share them. I'll just give a brief overview of the
Let's
the
start
site.
right here, I guess.
Perfect. So the town of Reading is proposing to construct a new parking lot off of Grove Street. The parking lot would provide off-street parking for folks using the trail system in the Reading Town Forest. Currently, cars are parked on the side of the street on Grove Street, creating an unsafe situation on the road. The project site's located on the northern side of Grove Street, as shown on this project plan. The Reading Town Forest borders the site to the north. The Meadowbrook Golf Club is to the southeast, and there are residential houses to the southwest. The Ipswich River runs along the northern portion of the town forest, a far way away from the site, but the wetland systems are connected to the Ipswich River. So the proposed work will include the construction of a gravel parking lot with 17 parking spaces, including 2 handicap accessible spaces. There are 2 portable toilets that are proposed just north of the handicap spaces. As Chairwoman Moore mentioned, 25 trees are proposed to be cut down to accommodate this parking lot. 24 of the 25 trees are not located within the buffer zone. You can see on this plan, the 100-foot buffer zone just sort of clips the limit of work in the northwestern corner there. The site will be regraded to accommodate this parking lot, as shown on the project plans. And a guardrail will be installed, as I mentioned, along Grove Street to limit any cars from parking along the street and encourage folks to use the parking lot in this area. Yeah, so it extends pretty far in either direction to discourage the use of parking on the street. So during construction, compost filter tubes will be installed in between the proposed work area and the nearby bordering vegetated wetland. In addition, a stabilized construction entrance will be installed to prevent any sediment and other material from being tracked out onto the roadway during construction. So the parking lot has been designed to have very minimal impact to resource areas. It only clips the 100-foot buffer zone, and it's a walking path, as you can see on this plan right here. All disturbed areas outside of the parking lot, but within the limit of work, will be restored with loam and seed after construction. The entire site is located within natural heritage priority habitat of rare species and estimated habitat of rare wildlife. We submitted a MISA checklist to Natural Heritage and received a letter today. Chuck, I believe you have a copy of that as well. but that they proposed a no-take action, but with a few conditions that the project will need to meet. So I will turn it back over to the commission and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, is there anyone on the commission with questions?
Yeah, Brian, yep.
Brian?
Yeah. So my first question has to do with the number of spaces. Can you explain how this size was arrived at? So in other words, where did 17 spaces come from?
Sure. James, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. Yeah, so we worked closely with the town manager to try to see what we could do to maximize the number of spaces that would be available to users of the town forest while at the same time trying to minimize impacts. And 17 was kind of the number that we ended up arriving at based upon site limitations and you know, so that's kind of the maximum that we were able to get.
So what are the site limitations as far as extending it back? I mean, obviously there's a grade there. It's not terrible, but did you look at extending it more deeply?
Yeah, the grade issue is definitely a big factor. If we try to scoot this back even farther to add even one additional space on each of these parking rows, it extends that cut line quite a bit farther back because we start having to eat into the slope that's right back there. As you can see, we're already cutting into the slope to a certain degree, and we have to have just a short retaining wall in order to prevent any further impacts back there. And one of the things that was important too was in our consultation with Natural Heritage, they emphasized certain limitations as to the amount of area that we were disturbing as well.
Okay, so the reason I ask, is I've been going there with my dog for 20 years or whatever. And so I'm not sure that 17 will actually satisfy certainly the high peak periods. So what thoughts do you have about any overflow parking?
Well, I can only speak for this location of this site that we were tasked with coming up with the design that would fit within the bounds of this site. Overflow parking is kind of beyond the scope of what I've been tasked with identifying. Chuck, I don't know if you have any insight into that you might be able to add to the discussion.
So the 17 spots is more than that that we saw. So I did a few counts each time I was down there, and I never counted 17 cars. Now I'm not around on Friday and the weekends, so given that, I only saw cars far less than that number. So the parking area has 17 spots. There's a barrier preventing additional parking. It's important to the Conservation Commission because we're protecting the existing wetlands. Plus, there's a plan for that area that the cars are parking on between this parking lot and Stroud Ave. And so a path's going to go in there to allow, you know, I guess like people to walk. A lot of people walk down Stroud Ave now. We didn't want to eliminate that, you know, that need and that access point. So we're just going to connect this parking lot to Stroud Ave through that area that was used for parking. So this side of the street is being used for, I guess, other things. So I don't know where parking is, and I could actually only say what James just said, which is that wasn't part of what we're tasked. The Natural Heritage really wanted to, so we have an entire lot here, and you would say, well, geez, let's just make it all parking. Why don't we do that? But we did have to sit down with Natural Heritage, and their concern is not about parking, is not about human beings, is not about dogs. They are worried about the protected habitat that exists in this area. And the first 300 feet is the most protected and where they want to keep us out. Now, other configurations of this lot may have yielded additional parking spots, but this is the approved location and the approved kind of like orientation of the parking lot as approved by Misty Ann Merrill, who's a well-known person at Natural Heritage. I don't actually know her full title, but she's the person I've always spoken to when something came up. So we're really constrained within this area to create this parking lot. And just as a comment, she did become concerned as we were kind of cutting into the hillside, and that was definitely a concern of hers. So we had to work with that.
Okay, I mean, and theoretically, they could park, down a block on Family Circle. I know the idea was to get cars off the road, but just as a different point, not this past Sunday, but the previous Sunday, it was nice, pretty nice weather. There were 25 cars along the street, both sides of the street, down Family Circle. So I get that it's not part of this project. I just thought I would ask if there's any
So
way it could be expanded.
I would guess, I would ask, it's 25 cars seems like a lot, but you're saying on both sides of the street. So does that mean there's 12 on this side of the street?
No, most are on this side. There's a few that scoot into the part where it's indented or outdented across the street. And then there's usually 5, 6 that run down Family Circle.
Well, it's a great parking spot here. What we are proposing was being proposed, but a new conversation could stem from this if
That's fine.
that becomes an issue.
I just was wondering about whether possible to dig in any further. So then my one remaining question is, on the plan, you see the line of the buffer, and it kind of wiggles its way down. Then all of a sudden it takes, right, Chuck, can you go back to the corner, the abrupt corner down here? Yeah. So why does it all of a sudden turn left and then go pretty much straight across Grove Street?
So the wetlands actually, if I can just share my screen really quickly.
Sure, I have to stop. Hold on a second. Okay, did it?
I'll show you our wetland delineation. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Great. So this red polygons that a lot, and this green line with the dots is the wetland delineation. So the delineation extended pretty far down this way. So that buffer zone is just following that line. It's out of view of the plan really. But the buffer zone does follow the correct line. So that's why it goes into the roadway there.
I mean, I don't see it crossing Grove Street in this particular image. And yet,
So
go ahead.
this is just my wetland flag. So the buffer zone would
Right,
extend something
it's 100 feet away, yeah.
that kind of. So
Okay.
that's why it.
All right, that's fine then. Martha, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Based on Brian's questions, I'm looking at the plan of the parking lot and wondering why there wasn't one more parking space on the right side of the driveway just as you enter near Grove Street. Was there something preventing, right in that area, preventing one more parking space opposite the ones on the other side?
Yes, there was a requirement for a certain amount of buffer space along the frontage. I believe it was let's see, I think we have it notated there, 10-foot minimum setback from property line. It's labeled to the left of the driveway, but it also applies to that area on the right side, and we wouldn't have had enough space to squeeze another parking space in right there.
Okay.
It's right here.
But you did,
It's because of the way things are angled, there just wouldn't have been enough space. Because
okay.
the front corner of the parking space would have encroached well within that 10 feet.
Got it. Okay. And I'm a little concerned about the cut into the hill at the back end. The topo lines for the proposed grades seem to be quite steep. Are they meeting the minimum slope or maximum slope requirements for grade?
So we have a 3-to-1 requirement, and if you exceed that, if you go more than that, then you just have to propose stabilization material, and the commission has to approve it. So we just have to know that's what the regulations are asking.
Can you show us the picture which has those topo lines on it?
Sure, it's just thing.
So I believe we're proposing 2-to-1 grading, but we have a note stating it will be stabilized with erosion control blanket.
Okay.
Yep, right there. If you just move, yeah.
So you're gonna like staple that into the slope, and then is it seeded?
That's correct.
Yep, everything outside of the parking lot, but within the limit of work will be loamed and seeded.
Did you call out your seed mix? I mean, does it make sense to have a seed mix? I mean, I was just wondering, like, are we talking about grass in this area, or I mean, it's really the edge of the forest?
Yeah, we left it generic. Usually the way we handle that with these projects is when they get into construction, then we have a set of specifications that goes along with it that gets into the nitty-gritty of the seed mix. And we have different ones that we select from depending on the objective. So we would select a mix that was proper for stabilizing a slope of this nature.
I'd love to see some shrubs with some good root systems there, not just grass, which would have relatively shallow roots. So, some native shrubs on that hillside, I think would be lovely.
Okay.
Is that part of the plantings you're thinking of, or were you just thinking of grass?
Well, the plan currently shows it grassed, but I don't think there would be any objection to the addition of some shrubs if the commission wanted to entertain that as a condition on this.
Carl, you're our landscape expert. What do you think?
I just want to state that area is located outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. There is a small portion of it within the buffer zone, but the majority of the lot is outside the buffer zone.
Which means it's outside our jurisdiction.
But it's also unlikely they're gonna have two different mixes, so we could be talking about what's in our buffer zone and still, but I think that has more to do with the additional shrubs.
Yeah.
But
okay, Andrew?
There really aren't any 2-to-1 sloped areas within the buffer zone.
Yeah, I just had some questions about what is within our jurisdiction. So just to clarify, the wetland that we're talking about is a vernal pool, correct?
Correct. Yep, it is a mapped vernal pool.
So my understanding is the jurisdiction goes beyond the 100 feet when we're dealing with a certified vernal pool. And then my question is on the other side of this site is lot 4, where we just spent lots of time talking about a conservation restriction to basically limit all sorts of things to happen on that site. Which just raises the question for me about why, again, how did we determine that this should be an RDA and not an NOI? It just seems like there's more public process involved when you're dealing with an NOI. And it seems like a project that calls for more public to be engaged with whatever is happening here. I know we have a lot of people designing this, the natural heritage, the town, the engineering. But it's at root, it's a conservation project, and it seems like it should be a positive determination for. It seems just like there's things that we want to talk about a little bit further than just the little bit that's in the 100-foot zone. But that's my opinion.
Any other comments from the commission? Brian?
Yeah, I should have brought this up before, but I didn't think to. Going back to thinking about the parking, the usage down there. Do you know what the staging of the construction is going to be? So what I'm thinking about is the guardrail going to go in before the parking is available? Or will the parking be available before the guardrail goes in? So in other words, can people get into the parking lot before they're obstructed from along Grove Street?
Yeah, those are logistical construction details that would remain to be ironed out as the town puts this out to bid for contractors. Usually we, have a discussion as to how we want that handled, and if there are certain limitations we feel we need to impose or certain sort
So
of phasing.
So who would impose those limitations? Is that something that should be noted on your plan now?
That's something that we would typically handle through specifications when we're putting a project out to bid. And one of the things we try to do is we try not to put too many limitations on a contractor, because the minute you start doing that, then you drive the price up. But if there are certain critical things that are important to the town, such as, for instance, keeping the parking on Grove Street and putting that guardrail in towards the tail end of the project, then those are the kinds of sequencing things that we can specify. And we would fully expect that those would be things that we would have discussions with the town manager about to determine what kinds of sequencing things are important for the town.
Okay,
Sure,
so
Brian, I just want to add one thing. There's no need to have this discussion, just make that a condition.
fair enough. In that case, I'm done again.
Okay. Are there any members of the general public who are here for this hearing who have questions or comments? Bill Sullivan.
Thank you. I'm Bill Sullivan, Chair of the Town Forest Committee. I just wanted to express our support for this. The Town Forest Committee we've talked about this, and the other meetings that I've been at, public meetings where this subject has come up. The whole concept of purchasing this lot was to improve the condition of access to the town forest. So I think there's already been a lot of public discussion of it. So I'm not sure that there's, it's obviously it's up to you all if there needs to be more in terms of full NOI, but in terms of the project itself, the Town Forest Committee is very much in favor of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Can I have a minute as soon as if there's no other questions from the public?
I don't see any other hands raised. So Chuck, what would you like to say?
Sure. So I wanted to address Andrew Driven's question about why is this a RDA? And it's an RDA because there's almost no work going along our buffer zone, which ends right there. This is the 100-foot buffer zone. This is the extent of our jurisdiction. So tonight we should only be talking about, and this is not even part of the project. This is an existing trail that we're going to meet up. I don't know if this somewhere in here is the existing trail or if it comes in from somewhere else. So it's this trail that's, public access, it's allowable. And then it's just anything any work that's in this area here. In this area here. And that's why it's an RDA, it's a request for determination of applicability, because none of the construction is happening on the within the conservation's jurisdiction. We actually had this outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, everything except for the trail. But on this side of the project, I guess in the deed, this is my understanding, I could be wrong, but I believe in the deed we were asked to keep it this far away from the property line. And if that hadn't been there, we could have removed this parking lot entirely from the 100-foot buffer zone. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that there is one tree being removed in this area. And I think for this tree here, you would meet our tree policy. The commission can talk about that, but they can have that replacement anywhere they want. It can be within the buffer zone, which is desired, but it could also be along the bank here. And I think planting in this area is reasonable. And I think if we brought it to the town manager and made a request, that likely would be well received, even though it's outside the conservation's jurisdiction. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, Carl. You have your hand raised, Carl. Do you have a comment?
Sorry. Yes. So Chuck, I know you just explained that most of the project is outside of the buffer zone. And I'm just trying to zoom in here. What was the proposed paving? Was it?
It's not. It's actually not paved.
What is it?
What's the surface, James?
So the vast majority of the parking lot is gravelled. There's a small section where we're proposing some paving just in those handicap spaces, just because we need surfacing that's meets ADA requirements. And then immediately outboard of that to the west, the area that's shaded out there is just simply a stone dust pathway, just a footpath really along the edge of the parking lot.
So I guess my question is, and I I'm not quite sure I have the answer, but I just feel like we've mentioned this in the past. So clearly all the 2-to-1 grading, it looks like there's 5 feet or so in that rear of the parking lot, but then it's right next to the buffer zone. So we're just conscious of redirecting water, or I know that the paving is pervious, so hopefully there won't be much of a sheet flow or anything, but I guess it's my one remark. I'm not really even sure, but just to bring up, I mean, I guess is that we're just to be cognizant of that we're not, having any new direction into the buffer zone or anything like that, which doesn't appear to be with the grading plan, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, we're not directing any runoff towards the buffer zone.
Okay.
I mean, that
Carl, while you are not on mute, I had wondered earlier what you thought about what we should have planted on that slope that's the 2-to-1 slope. Do you have recommendations?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I did hear you say that, and I agreed with your comment on not a wetland mix. I'm not I'm not. I think establishing a 5-gallon pot of some kind of a shrub or even a perennial would be much more effective if we choose to have some mitigation or planting. So all 4 shrubs.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let Andrew go next, and then we have Daniel Freeman next.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to comment on our jurisdiction again. My understanding is the vernal pool expands I think the 100 foot's a pretty simplistic reading of what our jurisdiction is. We're dealing with priority habitat, a vernal pool, of which we're doing significant amount of grading. I feel like we just took lot 4 and put all of that in conservation because it's important land, and we're actually altering a fair amount of land adjacent to the vernal pool that's going to have an impact on the wildlife that's there. So what does that mean? I mean, I think that means we would be able to comment on all the trees that are being taken down. We would ask for replacements. I don't think that's out of our jurisdiction personally. Of course, everyone else could disagree, but my reading of the regulations is this is within our. It's a pretty simplistic to say 100 feet. Anything after that, the animals don't care about. So I mean, it's just not really how nature works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's how it is. That's how the rules are. The only thing about the jurisdiction of the vernal pool is that can be applied to all 100 feet. You have no jurisdiction within the natural heritage area. It's their jurisdiction. It's a MESA, and they represent the rules and regulations under MESA. And that's why Misty Ann Merrill and Natural Heritage had a big bite of this apple because most of it is in their jurisdiction and almost none of it is in ours.
But we've given other folks a hard time that are adjacent to vernal pools. And we should be consistent.
We
Just
are
because it's on
consistent.
land.
So Lot A Main Street was within the 100-foot of that vernal pool. This is almost outside of the 100-foot. If you mentioned a site, I would let you know, but I know there's a lot of work and it's hard to not focus on that. And I also know that, vernal pools and their habitat can be 1,000 feet away, can be 5,000 feet away. But we have to deal with the regulations that are in front of us, and ours are our bylaw and the wetlands regulations. And, the reading of the wetlands regulations is that the vernal pools protected zone ends at the high water mark. So that's not helping this project. And our regulations only allow us to extend it to 100 feet.
The Reading regulations,
Yeah.
and the Reading regulations don't say
Talks
anything.
about mean annual high water of the vernal pool area. So it basically stops back here by the wetland line.
All right, can we give Daniel Freeman a chance to speak next?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a quick question, and I'm not sure if you're the right group to ask this, but I live right across the street from this parking lot here, and it's the first time we've sort of seen this map. And the first thing that jumps out is this guardrail on the over on the right. That seems to project over to where potentially a new lot is going to be. In other words, that's someone's yard potentially, and the guardrail seems to go way, in front of their yard. I just didn't know if that is the case and whether it's really needed to go that long.
James?
So the guardrail, as it extends to the east, I believe goes in front of lot 4, which, Chuck, if I'm not mistaken, is that the one that's set aside for conservation?
That is, there's a portion of that lot set aside for conservation, and this guardrail may be in that area. But I think that it's a point well taken. We'd probably want to revisit this guardrail.
Yeah, that guardrail is right across from my front yard, so I'm just trying to think of how it would look. So
yeah, so I don't think we have any more of this plan to show where the next lot is, but yeah, we can't. I mean, that's a private lot. It does have a conservation restriction on it, but and the guardrail in front, there's guardrails next to driveways all over town. But I'm not sure where this one would end, and maybe it would just end at the property line of lot 5. That seems to be kind of a question that came up at this moment.
Yeah, and really, the purpose of the guardrail is to limit the parking along Grove Street. And, if we take another hard look at this and decide that we can shorten it up because, we don't have a concern about parking there, then we can certainly do that. But, for this interim period while that lot's undeveloped, it might make sense to extend the guardrail across much of the front of the lot in the interim. And then if somebody comes along and develops that lot, then maybe a portion of it gets removed so that it can accommodate a driveway or something. And then, nobody's going to park in front of a driveway, obviously, so then the problem kind of takes care of itself at that point. It's proposed to be a wood guardrail to try to, not look like it's a big, steel highway guardrail or something like that.
yeah, that's what we were worried about, a big metal thing. Wooden isn't as bad looking.
Yeah, that's the idea. Try to stick to a little bit more of a pastoral type of aesthetic, I suppose you could say.
Chuck, can you show the part of the plans that show what the guardrail looks like?
Well, this is the guardrail. Oh yeah, sorry.
But there's an image of what the guardrail would be built like.
Here we go here. I think I just need to move this over. This is proposed as a wooden guardrail. Let's see what it says here. 4x10, kind of like railing going across the post. The posts are
8x8s.
8x8s. Is that what you said, James?
Yeah, 8x8 posts.
8x8x6, sure, right
Yeah,
there.
everything's bolted together. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty substantial but wood guardrail.
And I think we saw plans at the previous meeting of what the house construction on lot 4 would look like and where it would be located when we were voting about the conservation restriction. So that might be available on the conservation website for Mr. Freeman if he wanted to look at where that house is proposed to be built.
Thank you. I will check that out.
It also is probably on YouTube. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this project? All right, so where do we want to go from here? Let's work towards wrapping this one up. I think one thing we heard was we want to do something about the tree that's being cut down that's within the 100-foot buffer zone, and possibly putting shrubs on the hillside to mitigate for that loss of that tree. Are there any other conditions that we would want included in a negative determination for this project?
So in lieu of the tree, you would ask for a tree or two shrubs, and you're proposing to put them on the hillside that's just in back of the parking lot. And from what I gathered, you're going to make a request through me to the town manager for some additional plantings of shrubs. And I was wondering if you would let me know what you're looking for, or would you just like to receive a proposal, or just know that the request went there? Again, we have to work within our regulations. So that's the 2 shrubs or the 1 tree, and then a request for the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could make a suggestion, even if you were to provide just a general condition specifying the types of plantings, it's just a broad category, it would give our landscape architects the ability to kind of make sort of a best fit determination.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think, native shrubs for sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking along the lines of something like viburnums, maybe maple leaf viburnums, blueberries. Carl, do you have any other suggestions?
No, I think they're, designers can probably figure it out. I mean, native, shade tolerant. I think, something smaller root ball, like this, get going in that area. I mean, it will be disturbed, so it'll be hopefully decent planting, but yeah, viburnum's a good choice, but I think they can, I'm sure
We'll
they
put
can.
a list together and send it along with our request to Fidel. How's that?
Yeah.
And I'll reach out to both Martha and Carl on that.
Okay. I'm just thinking of, something to stabilize the slope. After the erosion blanket has done its job, we want some natural plants that will continue to prevent the erosion.
And Martha, I'll just add, I understand that they're going to stabilize it with some sort of mix, I think we're saying. And I think what we're saying is that a shrub is just maybe a little bit tougher for me. I think it'll just work, be a better option. So
I don't object to the grass, but I think shrubs in among the grass is what I'm talking about, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there plans for erosion control to keep any of the construction erosion from getting into the wetland? Is that already in the plan?
That's in the plan.
Okay. And Chuck, are you happy with the erosion control that's proposed?
Yes, and the order of conditions allows me to, during my pre-activity meeting, to make any changes I feel necessary based on site conditions, and that also continues throughout the project. So even though there's a lot of this outside the buffer zone, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of comments from me and the engineers about it.
Okay.
Um,
So you'll be following this project no matter who is the construction company. You'll be keeping an eye on them and making sure that we're protecting the wetlands.
So, yeah, so a town project, I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I imagine Weston and Sampson will be around, and the town engineering and all their staff and myself.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions or concerns from the public, members of the Conservation Commission? Last chance. Okay, can I
Let
have
me,
a motion? What, Chuck?
Oh, I was gonna just, I just found the plan of lot 4. If we just want to look at that quickly, maybe that would
Sure.
help some people. Just to understand. This is the area that is in a conservation restriction up to this point right here. And then there's their driveway. So I would say that that guardrail looks pretty accurate for that length. I didn't see it taking a corner. So I think we should be okay.
So protecting the conservation restriction with a guardrail and not going across in front of the driveway.
Right. Maybe that's what is being proposed.
Okay. Thank you. All right, can we close this hearing?
This is Brian. I make a motion to close the hearing on lot 5 Grove Street.
Second.
Brian
Right,
Bowe in
Carl.
favor. Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Gibbon in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Can we talk about conditions now, just before you make the issue? Some of the conditions you may want on the site, we already have. If we're talking about shrubs, they're going to be 5-gallon pots. We talked about the guardrail, and we're going to require 1 tree or 2 shrubs, and it seems to me we're requiring at the back of the parking area. And we're going to make a request for an additional amount that I'm going to have to kind of create that with Carl Ciccone and Martha Moore to present to the town manager. So,
Okay.
so they can see the plan. Any other conditions on top of that? I would add, make sure the street's swept each day at the end of the job. I know we have a construction entrance. It's only a small part in the 100-foot buffer zone. I would imagine that no stockpiling would be done in that area. There wouldn't be any need for it. And the guardrail will not be installed until the parking lot is complete and operational.
Those all sound good?
Yes.
Okay, so can we have a motion?
This is Brian. I'll make a motion that we issue a negative determination for lot 5 Grove Street with the conditions that we just delineated.
A second.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
This is Andrew Gibbon. I still feel like this is within our jurisdiction. I mean, I'm trying to find the 100-foot when we're talking about vernal pools, and I don't see it. So you'll get to move forward without me, but I'm not in favor. I think it should be positive.
Okay, and Martha Moore in favor, and just for the record, that was Carl Ciccone who seconded this.
Great.
And Andrew, I respect your concerns.
Whatever they're worth. Thank you.
All
Great,
right,
thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Last hearing of the night is 52 Luanis Drive. And I'll read that while Chuck makes sure the people involved are here. Open the public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Susan Skellenbach pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, and or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to construct an in-ground pool approximately 14 feet by 34 feet, replacement and expansion of an existing deck attached to the house, a 10 by 16 foot pool house and attached covered patio lounge, 12 feet by 16 feet, a putting green approximately 27 feet by 17 feet, and a safety fence around the backyard and landscaping. All of the work is within buffer zones to a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, and on the Conservation Division page under the project by year, DEP file number 270, Assessor's Map Lot 6, Assessor's Map 6, Lot 163. So it looks like we don't actually have a DEP file number yet. Is that correct?
That is not correct. We have a DEP file number and some comments from DEP just about a vegetated buffer strip. But let's introduce Kristen Farr and let her give the presentation right now. Kristen, would you like to share screen, or do you want me to just bring up the plans?
Chuck, if you could bring up the plans, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Can you tell us what the DEP file number is, Chuck?
Sure. I'll have to look at my email. So,
because we'll want to get that in the minutes. If we actually have a file number, we'll want
sure, sure thing. 1 second. Here we go. 0765.
So 270-0765.
That's right.
Thank you.
Are you looking at the pictures? I figured maybe we start with the pictures
Yep,
here.
the pictures are there.
Okay.
You ready for me?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm just going to move to
Hi.
the plan.
Yes, welcome, Kristen. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Kristen Farr with Hancock Associates. I'm a wetland scientist on the team there. With me tonight is Jason Morey of Brookwood Landscape and Stonework to answer any questions about construction methods and things. But as you stated, Martha, this is a buffer zone project. It's an existing single family house where they want to install an in-ground pool, patio, replace the deck, expand the deck a little bit, have a pool house and putting green, and a safety fence around the property. So there's no special areas, there's no natural heritage, no outstanding resource waters, ACECs or anything, you know, especially sensitive here. It is a buffer zone project, and under your bylaw, we are not touching the 25-foot zone of natural vegetation, nor are we going into the 35-foot no build zone. We are proposing erosion controls around the site, and let's see what else. Any excavated soils would be trucked off-site, so there would be no need to stockpile. Some minor grading is proposed around the pool area, but overall it's a pretty flat site. I know you guys did a site visit. I couldn't make that the other day in the blizzard, but I hope you could see what you needed to see in order to make a decision. But I am here if there are any other questions. So that's the short presentation.
Okay. I'm just, as people talk, I'm gonna just run through the pictures.
Okay, and I believe there was only one commission member who was able to make the site visit, and Chuck. So maybe you guys could tell us what you were able to determine in the snowstorm?
Yeah, I can give a quick rundown. So the lawn was kind of all covered in snow, so we couldn't tell a lot about what was there other than that the vegetation changed as you get towards the back of the yard, which you can see on some of these pictures that are up there right now. It kind of turns into woods. There's some Phragmites patch back there, but otherwise, I guess it's should be lawn kind of all the way back until you get to the wooded area. Chuck took a couple of soil samples with the old auger. I guess it was pretty rocky soil, had trouble getting down too far into it, and I don't think there's anything, Chuck can probably clarify this, but I don't think there's anything in the soil that suggested that the wetland extends farther into the yard than where it's currently marked. We found there were 4 flags, we found them all, they all seem reasonable from what we could see while we were out there. So.
Thank you, John. All right, Chuck, do you have anything else to add to this?
No, I agree with the wetland flags. I think that they were well placed. I wouldn't move any of them. You know, have to say that we did this in a snowstorm, so but they did look good, snow and all.
Okay. Any members of the commission with questions or comments? Brian.
Yeah. So you said that the any material will be trucked off-site. Is that every day? Will any be left for any period of time?
I wouldn't. Jason, is that something that you would be able to answer? Like how long the pool would take to excavate out and like how often that would be trucked off? You still there, Jason?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time. I'm Jason from Brookwood Landscaping. Typically, projects of this scale would take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks from start to finish. In terms of stockpiling material, most of the topsoil and organic matter will get taken out and probably removed right off the site completely. And then from that, as material is brought in, it's usually structural in nature. So what comes in will, eventually stay in place. We generally don't use any of the existing substrate or subsoils as backfill to the pools. This is a fiberglass pool shell, and it's really important that we use processed material, like 1/2 inch or 3/8 crushed stone, and it's got to be clean against the pool shell. So pretty much, the organic material will come out, and there's no reason for it to stay on site. I think it would probably just be in our way anyhow. It's kind of tight to access down the property line to, I believe it's the east side, between the two.
So Jason, if I can interrupt, you said probably a couple of times there in your answer. So will it be taken off right away, or will it?
Yes, it'll be taken off right away.
Okay, so you won't have anything to worry about eroding even overnight or for a day?
Well, we can try not to. If it needs to be something that's in the condition, then we're happy to, adhere to that. But typically, it's a tight site, and it's not really in our best interest to leave anything in our way. So I would, in terms of construction and building, it would make the most sense to get the material off-site.
Okay, so we can just put a condition on for that. So as far as the material you're bringing in, this clean fill you're talking about,
It's usually processed material like 3/4 stone, dense grit material, processed gravel, that kind of stuff.
Okay, and will that come in and be stored anywhere before it's actually put in the ground? Or that can be brought in, put in the ground, and then?
It's usually put in place and then spread and compacted, usually is how it goes,
Okay. Now, who's going to actually, so is it you folks who'll be doing the construction?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll be aware of other conditions and what have you.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have, Martha.
Okay, when you said which side the construction entrance is, can you tell us now that we've got the plan in front of us?
It's along the drive side, so we would be coming in to the left of the garage.
Okay, where the little path is shown is going
Correct.
to end up.
So that's the west side.
Okay, my apologies, it's the west side.
All right, and there is not currently a gate there that you have to get through. That's going to be part of the proposed fence.
Correct, it's all wide open right now.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on the commission with questions or comments?
Well, I have them, but
Okay.
so I sent you some emails this afternoon. I think someone should speak about those emails. So they came in late, but there's some review there that needs to be done, and there's a comment from DEP.
Okay, I
So
didn't.
I could do that,
reading
or
emails today, Chuck. So I haven't read any of the emails that came in today. So you'll have to fill me in.
sure. So there was a short discussion late in the day regarding some questions that we had from the site visit, and from the site visit we talked to the homeowners, and we mentioned some questions about the putting green and the Phragmites and their removal, and adding some planting, kind of like a buffer strip planting. And so as a result of that, we had some discussion with the applicant and their consultants, and it looks like at the same time DEP sent the file number, but said the applicant should provide a vegetative buffer strip between the lawn and the wetland, which is very similar to what the commission typically asks. So I did think Jason said that he wasn't doing some part of this project, but I can't find that in the email, but really can't read it and talk at the same time either. But so I was surprised when you answered Brian's question saying that you're doing the entire project. Is that true? Because I think that, what did you say, like Mayor Tree was going to do some part of the project?
No, I just recommended that we would not be the ones handling the mitigation of the Phragmites growth in the back.
Okay.
That you would ask me for a pesticide license certificate of some kind, and I explained that we're the design build crew.
Yeah.
And if that needs mitigation, we'd be happy to have you put that into the order of conditions, and we can, ask Mrs. Schillenbach or Bob if they want to hire another firm to handle that aspect of it. That question came to me at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so I really didn't have much time to respond. And then
Yeah, they typically come up in the order of conditions. I was just trying to give you I'm sorry. And during the meeting, I was just trying to give you a heads up since you answered, with the putting green, we're talking about the topsoil. My concern was with the infill, and what's that going to be? And it was sand. And so I replied to that. How are you going to keep the sand within the putting green area? And you said, well, it's really not needed. We can forego the operation maintenance plan and just not have sand in there. So I guess one of the things that we would be approving is the putting green without sand infill. And then the Phragmites, you said that you had a couple methods that you knew about, cutting it down and letting it just drowned under the water.
I guess that's a method I read about. It's called
sure.
Drown cutting. I don't know how high the water line is down there, so it might not be,
Yeah, I'm just trying to go through these, but so maybe I can get through this and then you can comment. So you mentioned that you're going to cut them down and then either drown them in the water, or you were going to also routine mowing the Phragmites on an ongoing basis to keep them in check, and then putting some broad spectrum herbicide in there. And so that's when I asked, great, can you send us a plan? Typically, it's a 3-year plan that you would be involved in with removing invasives. And if you could send me your, applicator's license. And then, and here it says planting beyond the fence. And this came up in the site visit along with the Phragmite removal and also along with the infill, that we were wondering about a vegetated buffer strip. And so I think that we got back from James. He was happy to add some trees and some evergreens and some hemlocks in different areas. And I saw immediately that that's not exactly the spot where DEP and conservation is kind of looking at. So where we look at, if the screen's available to everyone, is this in this 25-foot zone of natural vegetation. So between the flags and, well, which is grass, and within that 25 foot to establish a buffer strip. And this was also a comment, an unsolicited comment by DEP. So I think that that is something the commission should discuss, all three actually, and then, come to determination, is this something you want, or are you fine to move on without it?
Yeah, hi, this is Bob Schellenbach. We'll definitely do that, take care of that in the buffer zone.
Okay, typically we review a planting plan just to make sure that it's, native plants, spaced correctly, and within the zone that we want. But that can happen either before we approve or as part of the ongoing process. So, I
think Jason and I could work together to come up with some appropriate plantings for that area to fill it in, and then
sure.
Give some kind of invasives removal plan as well.
Okay. I think that's what that area would need to have the best survivability. So that's great. A licensed applicator, Mare Tree has one. I'm sure they actually are work for the town in a kind of a capacity to remove trees, and they sometimes, spray herbicides. Also, I've only seen it a couple of times, but I think that that they do have the licensed applicator. Does anyone want to take that up? Brian, Carl, John, Martha, Andrew?
I do like the idea of adding native plants in the zone of natural vegetation, that 25-foot zone. When I was going over the plans, it looked to me like a lot of the plantings proposed are not native plantings in the area around the putting green and the swimming pool. And I'm curious why the particular choice of things like threadleaf Japanese maple and things like that were picked out as appropriate plants for that area.
I can answer you. Just for visual acuity, this is a formal area that they're going to be dining or potentially dining under the canopy, and a dwarf plant in that area was more of a focal point of such. So most of the plants around the landscape are ornamental in nature, for visual and fragrant and plantings and that sort of thing. So ease of maintenance is another one. We don't want anything that's going to grow too big and be leaving lots of debris in the pool or on the putting green itself. So trying to kind of keep the plants sporadic, if you will. Definitely trying to cover some square footage in terms of garden bed and planting space. But the plants themselves are more on the ornamental side and for ease of management and maintenance.
I am I haven't had a chance to look at the invasives versus natives versus ornamentals in great detail, but my sense is that boxwood may be not a desirable plant to be planting. Carl, you have more expertise in that area. Do you have a comment on whether boxwood is appropriate?
Just from like an aesthetic, I mean, is that what you're asking, Martha? Or-
More like, is it risky to become an invasive? You know, I know, like, if it was burning bush, I would say don't plant burning bush. I don't remember.
No.
I have a sense that boxwood may be on that invasive end of the spectrum.
I don't believe that. I think in our world they're just susceptible to. We're just not planting them much because they're just kind of dying off in that sense, but not from an invasive point. No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Good.
No.
Okay, so I guess, you know, my concern in the zone of natural vegetation, we would definitely be looking for native plantings and not ornamental plantings.
Yeah, can I just chime in on that? I did respond to Chuck. I apologize if I didn't get a chance to clarify, but you know, I did make some suggestions of red maple, some gray dogwood, some bayberry, some low blueberry, and viburnum along that buffer. So I don't really have an idea of what the depth is that you're all seeking. Is it a 25-foot by 70 feet? Is it 10 feet by 30 feet in terms of square footage and space? But I'm sure we can come up with something that's suitable. And if you're willing to put that in the conditions and just kind of give us some guide rails to kind of stay within in terms of the scope of your buffer, you know, we can accommodate that.
It looks like it's about 80 by, I don't know, 30, Jason, just FYI.
Okay.
So I would comment, Martha, on the 80 by 30 because I did read in the email Chuck forwarded us about the gray dogwood and the maple, and I think with an area that large, it doesn't all have to be planted like square foot wise, but canopy wise, I think that's the right approach. Some larger canopy trees, right? Maybe get some oaks in there, maple, right, Martha? It's a good. This is an open area where we can get something, you know, of some size, which would be nice. So
yeah, I like oaks.
Yeah.
What
Oaks too.
could it be things that are currently growing back there that we know would do well in that environment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I feel a little bit out of this conversation because, as I say, all this email happened today when I was not able to access email. So I need other people to take over or something, you know, don't count on me for the.
So I would say I'm gonna step in just a little bit just to kind of, and then Brian, please. I'm just gonna say that in the 100-foot buffer zone, we've typically asked for native planting. So I just want you to be aware of that. We should have a plan to review, and we can't, I wouldn't suggest trying to figure one out tonight. And it sounds like the other thing I talked about with the golf putting green is not needed for the operation and maintenance plan. But the rest of it seems to be, again, enough time to put a plan together. And when we're talking vegetated buffer strip, we're talking about the entire back lawn that's within the property and then a certain width. And I think that width needs to be determined by the Conservation Commission tonight. But then you should go back and look at the property and look at the trees and the shading and find out what will work. Maybe how far out you have to plant it to establish an oak tree, which I heard someone mention that they would like. But the canopy looked pretty dense in that area. So that's my suggestion. So Brian,
Yeah, I was kind of leaving this for people who actually could make the site visit or what have you, but first of all, as far as the buffer strip goes, I agree with what Chuck said. It does need to grow into the full distance. Doesn't mean it has to be chock-a-block full right now. That's why we'd want to see a planting plan that we could review. And we'd like to see a mix of trees and smaller shrubs and what have you. It'd be good if the trees also took into account trees that would be understory trees, not just all oaks and what have you. But that should be your choice because you have to design the plantings and then we approve it. Not up to us to do the design, and certainly not tonight, like Chuck said. The other thing was, we talked about invasive control, and that kind of got shunted aside. I think we would want to see an invasive plan before we could approve the whole thing. And Jason, you had mentioned one possible method. Okay, fine, but what method is going to be used? Again, we'd want to see that in black and white so we know what it is we're approving. Another point is we talked about Mayor Tree. They certainly do work around town. And there are other good options. Parterre is one that we've used on a number of projects and the results have been very good. Again, it's not up to us to recommend anything. That's just another name I wanted to put in front of you, so you can consider them. They're out of Billerica, right, Chuck?
they're out of Billerica. Yeah, they did some invasive management at the Millet Soms in Morganland. I think it was Japanese knotweed.
Right, I think they're actually doing something in the town forest now or a week ago. They were doing an invasive survey. I think those are the points that I'd like to make. They haven't been made so far.
Anybody else have comments from the commission? Okay. I was looking over the plans and there's this large amount of deck around the pool that's called tumbled paver patio. Can you tell us if that is impervious surface around the pool or if that is a pervious construction design for the area around the pool?
Yeah, it can be either, to be honest with you, whether you fill the joints with polymeric sand or not. The pavers do have upwards of a 3/8 spacer in them. So if you wanted to have a permeable space, you could leave the joints open. Ideally, you'd like to close them for walking ease. It's a pool, so you kind of want it as flat and as smooth as possible. But the idea is to have, you know, a patio deck around your pool. So we would hope that it could be an impervious surface.
Okay, that adds a lot of impervious to the backyard. And there's also the roof of the proposed pool house and covered patio. Do you have any plans for stormwater runoff collection from all of that impervious surface?
I don't think we had.
Not on this plan. I don't think it's required, but go ahead. I'll let you talk.
No, I don't think we had anticipated that since it didn't, I mean, no, we hadn't thought about it yet.
So what are the sizes of the pool house and patio?
Let's see.
10 by 16 and 12 by 16. So it's a
So-
total of 22 by 16 for that covered area.
So these aren't much bigger than a typical shed. And
Right.
I think that's why I didn't bring infiltration up. I mean, you could always put in a dry well or something like that or something, but we usually don't ask for it the shed. So I'm just putting that out there. You guys can
And
discuss
is the
it.
putting green pervious to water? You were talking about the
It's
sand.
pervious, yeah. It's 100% pervious.
Okay, so that doesn't add any impervious surface. Okay. And you've got the plantings around perennials, mixed perennials and stuff like that. Okay, so Chuck was saying we typically ask for natives within the 100-foot buffer zone, and practically all of this pool area and plantings is within the 100-foot buffer zone. Which takes me back to you've chosen a lot of non-native ornamentals in this area, such as Coosa dogwood rather than native flowering dogwood. So are there other people on the commission with opinions one way or another, whether the ornamentals are appropriate for this location?
I see only 3 or 4 myself in terms of the large specimen plants.
Yeah, but so it would be within the 100-foot buffer zone. It's native planting, but so even if it's a tree, large, small, shrub, large, small, all native within that buffer zone, it's just these non-native plants don't do anything to contribute to, I don't know, the habitat.
But we wouldn't
Maybe
want an oak
shape.
tree around the pool. You know, we wouldn't want to be planting big trees right around the pool.
Well, there's other options. I mean, typically, you know, all this back and forth, I mean, I get it that the commission is trying to, but it really should be like, this is the 100-foot buffer zone. You need to look at native planting. So it seems to me that could be done. It's done a lot in other towns. It's been done in this town for years. So I think you may come back and say, this one, absolutely, I'd like to have this. These are my reasons, or these few I'd like to have. These are my reasons. But the request was that within the 100-foot buffer zone, all the planting is native.
Why don't you let us work on that for the next meeting and provide something that maybe have some alternatives. Jason and I can work on that and then get back to you.
Thank you, Kristen. So it sounds like we will need to continue so to give you a chance to do that.
Right.
Okay. And Andrew, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to agree. I mean, most of what I'm looking at the planting list, it's most of it is native. There are it's a handful that aren't. So, and just seconding what Martha and Chuck have said, we do prefer all native plants if possible. If you have a reason to not to do it, we just want to hear the reason. And then just moving things along for when you come back next week. It's really, since I haven't spoken, it's the buffer zone in the back that I'm also concerned about. The planting plan for that. So nothing new, no questions. Just wanted to speak up before we continue the project.
Are there any members of the general public who came to this meeting who have not had a chance to speak and would like to? Please use the raise hand function in the reaction section of your Zoom screen. Okay, seeing none. Chuck, do we have anything else we need to talk about?
Just a motion to, I guess, continue to the next meeting.
But before we do that, can we have the agreement from the applicant that they are okay with us continuing?
Yes, that's fine.
In that case, this is Brian. I'll make a motion to continue
February 8th.
52 Luannis to February 8th.
I'll second that. This is Andy.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, thank you. So
Thank you.
Yeah,
we
thank
look forward
you.
to seeing more information about your plantings. And I guess also information about invasive control proposed.
Yep.
Were
Yeah.
there any other questions we're looking for them to come back with, Chuck?
So my list was native trees within the 100-foot buffer zone, vegetative buffer strip, all native. And then there was a little bit of discussion about the stormwater runoff. But I think that didn't go anywhere. So because the structures are shed size, infiltration is not needed. Is that what we agreed on?
Mhm.
Yes.
I think the putting green has been resolved. And we asked for the invasive control, a plan. I said it in my email, typically an invasive control plan is a 3-year plan. That includes monitoring and reports back to the Conservation Commission once a year, letting us know how it's done, how it's going.
Just regarding Martha's concern for the impervious, it wasn't just the shed, right? I mean, it's also the whole pool and patio area. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that could have been turned into a, where's the runoff going and how, could that be captured? But it didn't materialize.
Well, I asked it, nobody else commented. But I think that is an important question. I think, Andrew, in general, we consider a pool not to be impervious surface in terms of runoff because it contains the rain.
Yeah.
But the decking around it, if the water is flowing away from the pool and not into the pool, that can increase the stormwater runoff and cause problems.
So, and Martha, my thought when you mentioned that was that the whole pool decking seems to be surrounded by, a planting layer. So I thought at least that was a defense against, a 1% flow of water kind of coming that direction. But I mean, it is a sizable pool deck. But I guess that's where my head went was, well, it will probably be captured at some point, but.
Okay, so the vegetation around the pool area would help with decreasing the stormwater runoff.
And I actually just thought of one thing, Chuck, too, I don't know if I mentioned this in the past, but if you're lowering the pool, right, for the winter, is there some kind of plan for, where does that hose go? Where does that water go, right? Or the town probably has a bylaw too, but specifically with the conservation, maybe that could be noted too, if they drop the pool in the winter or not.
Is this the one that's a saltwater pool?
Yeah.
Right, so that would impact where the water went if it was going to be drained out, some of it.
Yeah, so maybe we could get some more information on how the pool would be winterized and if there's any discharge and how that discharge would be handled. If the pool, so based on where the pool is, if they even just discharged it on the ground, it's fairly flat and it's going to have a lot of lawn between where it is and the wetland. So that may be it, but I can send a operation and maintenance plan for a pool. I'm not sure it's salt and cartridge, but you can look at that and see what the commission has looked at and approved in the past.
That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I think, Chuck, you really wouldn't want them dumping their salt water from the pool on the lawn. You'd be killing the lawn with all that salt.
Yeah, I actually don't know what happens. I've heard that they don't have to do any maintenance with these things. So that's part of it. If they need, just let us know.
Do you want me to explain? It's a saltwater pool. It has an ionizer that converts salt to chlorine. So there are no chemicals in it.
Huh,
It's not a chlorine-based pool. So
Do you have to lower it in the winter
we do.
time?
We do lower it, but you could drink the water. We don't-
So
we don't
you're
have
saying it's
chemicals.
perfectly fine to discharge it out onto the lawn? Sounds like it is anyways.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the kind of information we need.
okay. So I think you've got your list of questions to come back with answers for.
Good.
Okay, and we've already voted to continue, so thank you very much. And we can move on to our next items, which I think are no more hearings, but old new business, Chuck?
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. I just want to have the commission ratify a emergency certification on Arcadia Ave on 27 Arcadia Ave. There was a report to the town early in the morning that the sewer pipe had backed up. And, it didn't happen that morning. I guess it was probably something they tried to deal with over a couple of days. But when the contractor got to the site, he called the town engineering department, and this went into our open government system, and I spotted it. And being in the 200-foot riverfront area, any work out there would need an emergency permit. The town engineer declared it an emergency and sent me an email, and that said that this had to happen right away. So with that, I signed off on the emergency permit. I went out and checked the site. It was a simple trench from the front of the house to the road, and the contractor had the wherewithal to even avoid major tree roots. So the trench was quite deep, but it was narrow. They only did what they had to do, and by like 11 o'clock, trench was dug, the new pipe was in, they were ready to backfill. They were going to do the second part, which happened in the roadway the next day. That wasn't something that we typically get involved in, any work within the road right of way, trenching and whatnot. So there didn't seem to be the need for any conditions on this project because it was lawn and there were no shrubs removed for this trench. And they avoided the tree roots, which would have been a condition. So I asked that the Conservation Commission, after any questions they may have, just ratify this emergency order and approve its issuance.
Can we have a motion to ratify the emergency order, or do we need any discussion first? Okay, anybody make a motion?
This is Brian. Make a motion that we ratify the emergency order for 27 Acadia.
This is John, I'll second.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Andrew Gibbon in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Yeah, I saw that work on my drive to school. Didn't know that's what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it was again, it was kind of hard to get information, and I had to do a site visit. When these things come in, and then the Abajone is there, you're always wondering, where does the sewage exit the house? It could be in the back. Some properties have that. So glad you checked it out, Andy. I appreciate that.
Sure
I
did.
knew you would, because it's in the
Close look.
riverfront, right?
Okay, it's 10:08. Is there anything else on this agenda that we need to get to tonight?
Yes.
Simon's Way.
Yep. That's what
Yep.
that's what I think the yes is.
I can read you that.
Well, that's easy then. We had a meeting last Wednesday. It was our second meeting. First one was really quick. It was just setting up the chair and the vice chair. We had a little more discussion last time, and ultimately it was, we need public process. Right now, it's just a survey to figure out what the options are for that site or what the people want. And we had a little discussion amongst the people there, like sports complex. Susan Bowe showed up and commented about a compost as a potential, but ultimately we decided doing a survey. It seems to be the route right now. There are other concerns about contamination on the site. Since it was previously used for construction, there are signs that there might be contamination. So there was a question raised, do we do testing now? And just to get it out of the question, or do we wait till we know more of what we want to put on the site? And then could do testing later. There's general consensus that we were just going to wait on the testing. But that's probably the biggest point of discussion at this moment in time, other than what do we want to put there? It's not a big site. There already is talk about building something, parking beyond the, so the buildable area is pretty small. And we don't know what we're going to put there, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But I do already sense some pushback of wanting to build into the buffer zone of the wetlands. So I'll have to keep reminding them that that's not, we want to avoid that if possible. But yeah, so I mean, if you guys have any ideas of what you want to see there, speak up. Yeah, check on.
Sure, I had a question. So I think I read the summary in the paper, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like they were looking for parking, that it's going to be a sports venue. But the ironic twist was, let's remove the existing parking in front of the skating rink and put a field there and put parking in this newly proposed spot. Do I have that wrong? Was there some talk about that?
There was some talk about taking a bigger view of all the available space that's in that general area. And there was some kind of discussion about that. But there's not much, there's also a large space behind the skating, which I think they own, right? Or they have the lease on. There's a lot of space back there, but that's not part of our just purview. So whatever was discussed, I was kind of, I don't know what relevance that had to.
But it doesn't sound like they were saying, well, this can only be a parking lot. We'll eliminate parking lots somewhere else and turn that into a field. Because I know they all wanted to, it seemed like the field was a good choice. Field, a sporting something that could be sporting parking. Just kind of wondering where they were going, or what your sense of where they were going with that. But it sounds like it hasn't been, I don't know, digested and thought out, and no one really has a plan.
No, there's no, I didn't get a sense of if there's any direction yet. And I don't really get a sense of how we're going to make a decision, to be honest. But so that's what the survey was coming into play.
Yeah, so this is the area that you're talking about here.
Yes, and there, I mean, there was also talk on the north of the roadway there. They're noticing some of that green area, and like, what can we use any of that? Yeah, that I think that already is some soccer and baseball fields, but even the area between the little pond and that little stream, like, can we build over there? Yeah, but I think it's loaded with vernal pools and wetlands. So it's like,
so it sounds like there was some scope creep going on.
Yes, definitely. But focusing on what we want to do there, I mean, I'd like to see personally, I think it's good for a building of sports. Like, there's in Winchester, they have an indoor soccer area. And I went to a Boston sports complex in Wellesley, which is pretty nice. I think it would be nice to have some sort of indoor sports complex, but
yeah, so that's what I thought I read, because of the constraints of this site here.
Yeah,
and the location of this parking lot area. I mean, look, there's like 4 cars in it.
Yeah.
That could be a field. This could be parking. I could be wrong. Maybe I was just I'm not saying that's a great idea. I'm just saying I thought that's what I read. Obviously this is the skeet shooting field. They're not shooting in this direction.
Right.
Yeah, it's
And then-
interesting. I guess parking, you would want to push for, obviously stormwater for sure. I mean, meet the stormwater standards for the parking lot. If that's what they wanted to propose. And of course, like the lighting would be another issue that we would want to address.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but there was nothing actually put on the table of any real proposal at this point.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. Yeah, and I know that you're working with Carlo Bocci.
Yeah, Carlo's on that committee and he's the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Chuck Robinson is the vice chair. So when I say Chuck, I'm always referring to you, but they always think I'm talking about the other Chuck.
Oh, is Chuck Robinson a wetland guy?
No, he's the vice chair of the SWUC committee.
Chuck Robinson is a baseball guy through and through.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that I thought was interesting is that Carlo and someone from the school and someone on the recreation department. So there's already 3 votes for a field. Because I think Carlo mentioned it many times, according to the paper, that's probably what he thought was a good idea. And
That's
so,
my understanding too, is that there's a lot of push for ball fields, because there's always issues with playing space in Reading between softball, baseball, whatever. And so my understanding from my spies was very much a push towards playing fields.
but there's no issue. I mean, if the playing field can fit, parking area can fit, I don't see the problem. I would only say parking fields, same lighting, stormwater for both. I mean, there's a little bit of stormwater that goes on in natural fields also. I mean,
yeah.
Is there any conversation about putting the senior center there?
That came up. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was in the paper too, but seemed like there was only one person saying that. It would be great to talk about each one and just understand from what I heard about the senior center, maybe not even the seniors are saying this, but others are saying they would like it downtown somewhere. That seems to be the best spot to have it. And
Well,
this area not being downtown is not the most desirable.
It also sounds like, given the small amount of space that's actually here in this site, that a senior center would be either constrained too much, or they'd be looking to encroach on the area.
Yeah. I think people in general were surprised at how little space they actually had to work with.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So I thought there was like something like 4. I don't know why this isn't working. I thought there was what is this?
I think it's 15 acres in total, and like 10 of it is unbuildable, a little less than 5 is.
Yeah, so there's wetland there, and everyone mentions the total square footage. I mean, I heard Carlo say that a couple of times at a select board meeting, but there's less than 5. It's more like 3.5, and that was from the rough measurements that you can actually do on this by. Where am I? It's by just going. No, actually, I was in the right spot. If you turn on the topography, because we know that slope exists.
Yeah.
And where it starts getting rough down at the edge, I have to turn off this. But right here where it starts getting steep, we know that that's pretty much the area of where it's wet. So there's like a slope in there. So you want to be on the higher side of that. So I marked that out one day, and that was like 4.2. And then Ryan did it a little more accurate using his CAD program, and he came up with 3 something. And I guess you're down to 2.5 when you add in the 25-foot and the 35-foot buffer zone.
That's it. That's the problem. I don't think people are looking at it from that more detailed perspective. They just understand what the total
Yeah,
space is.
it says right here, 15.2.
And that's
But
what you hear all the time, yeah.
there's only like, there's 12 of that's wet all the time, like super wet. And there's also some sort of deed kind of restriction in this area. You have to stay away from the gun club for some, that was in the paper too. So there's a access where you can't get any closer. But just to, if it's a field, you can be in the 35-foot buffer zone. If it's a artificial turf field, it's going to be a problem because artificial turf is basic, what supports the artificial turf is a structure.
Right.
So that would push it out of the 30, but a natural field could be right in the 35-foot zone. With any of the variants they got, they could be close to 30 feet away, maybe
But
more depending on how good the cut. Yep.
But even with a natural field, you have to take into consideration backstops, benches, things like that. Probably would be a storage shed for the equipment. So you still would have structures in there, depending on where they were put.
Yeah, well, that parking lot across the street is pretty close for any kind of storage. I don't know. Obviously, for me, it's got to go a little bit further. I guess if we turn the aerial back on and then looked at what we're talking about for a field here. I mean, I'd rather see a soccer field.
Yeah. I
So
mean, basically that's it.
you might have a soccer field like in this area here.
We've made it to 10:20. Do we need to continue this discussion another day? I
No,
just
no,
soon wrap this one up.
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And-
guess with that, yeah.
Thanks.
Guess the fun's over,
Trying to
Mom.
move us along here, Chuck. Just trying to move us along.
Yeah, okay.
We have minutes for approval from January 11th. Brian has sent those out to us once and then with a revised version.
No, actually, mine was from December. Oh, yeah, maybe you're right. I thought it was December though, no?
Oh, I don't remember.
Actually,
It
I
was
forget at
the
this point.
last meeting, wasn't it? 111?
No,
Oh, Andrew said he would do 111.
Yeah, so mine was December 14th.
Oh, well, that's not on the list. Did we already approve December?
I thought it was approved, but
No,
I think it came in too late and no one got a chance to look at it.
Right.
Now that Brian's saying,
That's the one that Martha sent me some comments on, and I finally got it updated and sent it back out.
I can put it on the agenda next time, we can approve it finally. I am not going to be able to get to mine. And the reason is all the orders of conditions that you guys approved. So that's going to be put off. It's only one though, so I think it can be our one outlier. But I really have to get these things by next Wednesday out.
Fair enough.
Obviously, wouldn't want any problems with 550 Main Street.
So what you're telling us is to stop approving orders of condition?
Well, we did have a kind of like a check, and we used to say, how do you feel, Chuck? And you would just close it, and then I would get an additional 2 weeks by doing that. But it doesn't matter. There was only a couple, and the RDAs are easier. So I just wanted to get through these ones, but I'm putting a lot of effort into 550 West Street.
Okay.
Making sure the details are in there.
So what about today's meeting? Who's gonna be the lucky volunteer for this?
Oh, and let me just add, I did talk to Andrew about getting a minutes person. And he understands this. He's taken minutes for three committees. And so he had some ideas and they were all shot down. But it is something that we want. And we had a discussion about, having people that just have to start doing minutes.
Is there a way we could use any of our budget to hire some part-time stenographer kind of person?
I think there is, because it is considered office support,
I would
and
think
that
so.
that budget, the state fees are to run the office, and if we need this to run the office efficiently, it probably is an okay. I'd have to have, Fidel and Sharon look at it, give it a determination, maybe town council. I don't think it needs to go that. I think it's pretty obvious. There's some write-ups. I already have some DOR write-ups on it. Could present that to them, but we could hire someone to do our minutes.
Yeah, at least a part-time temp kind of person, yeah. And
Yeah.
if the town wanted to hire somebody full-time and split them, that's fine too, from our perspective.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's a real burden on the commission members to ask them to do everything else we're doing and also do the minutes. It was something we did as a stopgap measure to get caught up on all those minutes that were backlogged. But I don't really like to keep asking members to keep volunteering month after month. Now, that said, I would be willing to do tonight's minutes. I make no promise how soon I'll get them done, but I'm perfectly willing to take on tonight's. And who was doing January 11th?
That's on, I haven't started, but that's on, I said I would do it.
Okay, all right, so we don't have any minutes to approve today. I will do tonight's minutes and we'll see. Andrew and I can have a race and see who gets them done first.
And do we need to vote on going hybrid or staying remote? I know, Chuck, you were talking about this at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, so I'd like to know what to do. It seems like to be hybrid, I have to have 4 members here at town hall. 1 can stay at home and be on the screen. That's up until the beginning of April at this point, or we could just stay hybrid up until April when we have to make a decision.
You mean we could just stay Zoom?
Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So those are the 2 choices. If you say, I'd like to come to town hall, then 4, you have to come to town hall. We need a quorum at town hall.
Well, I think given there's only 5 of us, it probably makes sense to stay Zoom.
Right.
Just to make it more convenient for everybody.
John doesn't agree. John, did you want to say? John felt like.
I'm all in favor of staying on Zoom. It makes evenings here so much easier.
Oh, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does.
Well, I'm still at the office. It's nice.
Okay,
Good,
so
good Wi-Fi here.
sounds like the consensus is we'll continue to be Zoom only for February and March.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
On that note,
Anything else on our agenda, or can we adjourn before 10:30?
One more thing. I was contacted by someone who's going to put in an application to be on the Conservation Commission.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And who is this person and do we like them?
I don't know. He's an LSP, and when he puts his application in, I believe he's an LSP, and when he puts his application in, I'll share it with the commission.
What does LSP mean?
It's MCP. It's for license site cleanup for that. So oil spills.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
All right. Well, we would very much like to have another member, so we have a little less pressure on each of us to have to make every single meeting to get a quorum.
If nothing else, we can make him do the minutes.
So, yeah, okay, yeah, we want to end it, but I was wondering if there's a transcript thing with Zoom, and I don't think we have that package to kind of like record the transcript. And so I was going to at least ask for that. That may help some of us, you know.
That's a good idea.
Since we've been recording it on Zoom, Zoom might be able to turn that into text. That would be helpful.
That's what I hear, but I think it's an upgrade in our package. And I also hear that it's a good, it's not perfect, and you still have to read it and make changes. So you couldn't just like, you know, just approve it as is.
It sounds like it still would be faster though.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. It really depends. I think when you're doing it word for word, it doesn't make any sense. But when you're at the meeting and you understand what's happening and you're only looking at for names and whatever else, the way I do the minutes, when I do them, I'm only really paying attention to like the meat. If you guys feel like you said something that needs to be in there, that's your responsibility. And you should look at them with that in mind when I send out the minutes. And if I'm doing the next ones, that's how I do it. And that's probably what you should do, Martha, if it speeds things up. This is what we talked about. These comments were made. I'm obviously going to make some comments about some people, but you don't have to get it exact. It's up to them to correct that.
Okay.
So,
yeah, my concern is I wasn't taking notes on who actually attended the meeting today. And, you know, I know it was all 5 commission members, but the members of the public and the people who are representing the applicants, I'm not necessarily going to have all their names correct because I didn't take notes because I hadn't volunteered at the beginning to do the minutes.
Yeah.
right.
I
So
don't know how people get those.
you should just write it exactly like that and put either question marks or leave it alone. And then when Brian reviews it or I review it or anyone else, you know, they spot that and they do it. I think the way we're doing minutes is we're basically relying on that person to come up with a complete package where it should, even if you're writing them, it should be, you know, 80% with the extra 20 being put in either by the commission at the meeting or before the meeting, just to add in those little phrases. And maybe that would speed it up a lot.
Well,
So,
the thing that takes the time is watching a 3.5-hour meeting.
Yes.
And Nika somehow had a way of making her thing play faster.
Yeah, I could do that through YouTube. There's a little, you could do that on YouTube.
Okay.
Make it play at like 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
That's entertaining.
All right. So
All
are we
right.
good?
we're good.
Can I
So
have a
what-
motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn. At 10:31.
I'll
Second.
second.
Anyone? Okay.
All right.
All in
Yeah.
favor?
Kyle, you good for the next meeting?
As of today, sure.
All right.
Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, no, I just missed last week because I was away, but trying to just pretty much be back in a rhythm here. So
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure I was going to be on time. I just barely made it.
yeah,
So it was
no,
really good
thanks.
to know that I could get stuck in traffic and still there would be a quorum before I got here.
And thank you for moving things along, Martha. Good job.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.